Chapter 470. Finding the attributes of every single herb was not something that could be done in a short period of time, or even in a few years. It could only be done slowly and using an extremely long period of time. As for the question of how herbs that were originally of the wood attribute could have attributes of the 5 elements, Zhang Xiaohua had some vague ideas. For example, the scarlet fire grass was red in color, and there was no vegetation growing in its surroundings. Even the soil would turn to stone, so it was obviously of the fire attribute. The 2 main ingredients of the crimson flame pill, the crimson pearl grass, complemented the fire attribute scarlet firegrass, so it was definitely of the water attribute. Of course, there were even more herbs that could not be directly identified from their appearance, so it was impossible to directly determine their attributes. The Qi practitioners of the Path of Immortals were very resourceful, and they had come into contact with many more herbs than the Qi practitioners of the Path of Immortals. If Zhang Xiaohua did not use any special techniques and only tried using his stupid method, who knew when he would be able to tell the difference? And how could the art of herbal medicine be able to clearly identify the attributes of dried herbs? Firstly, there were limited types of herbs. Secondly, different people would fall sick every day. It was very easy to obtain results through large amounts of practice. Even so, the art of herbal medicine had only reached its current scale after several thousand years. Zhang Xiaohua engraved the pill recipe and her own experiences into the jade slip. After expending some of her spiritual sense, she stowed the jade slip away and began to cultivate the God's Guide. Ever since she began using her spiritual sense to write jade slips, Zhang Xiaohua knew that apart from true qi, the spiritual sense was extremely important in the path of immortality. She had only just come into contact with the path of immortality, so she might have to use her spiritual sense in many places in the future. As a result, she cultivated the God's Guide every day. After a while, she finished replenishing her spiritual sense. Zhang Xiaohua felt that her spiritual sense had improved slightly, and the God's Guide had also improved slightly. Just as she was about to stand up, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of the mnemonic chant recorded in the appendix of the God's Guide jade slip to conceal her cultivation and spiritual sense. When Zhang Xiaohua saw it that day, she didn't think much of it. The way of immortality that she cultivated was just a legend in Jianghu. No one had seen it before. It would only appear when she used the way of immortality to fight with others. How could anyone discover it on a normal day? This incantation was completely useless to him. Now that his mind was moved and he thought of this, he felt that something wasn't right. After a period of time, he would have to spread the incense cult alone. The aroma sect was a colossus. It was a super sect with a legacy of 10,000 years. When Zhang Xiaohua was at Huanxi Manor, she had not felt the power of its legacy, but when she arrived at Rejuvenation Valley, she found that even a small faction like Rejuvenation Valley had old men like Elder Zhang, as well as some people she had never seen before. As a sect, the aroma sect had stood tall in Jianghu for 10,000 years. How could it not have its own heritage? Who knew if there were some old monsters hidden in the aroma sect that were over 100 years old? Moreover, it was the legacy of the way of immortality. Perhaps they had some secret method to see through a person's cultivation. She was unlucky to be seen through. However, she was going to the aroma sect under the banner of Rejuvenation Valley. Nominally, she was the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. Wouldn't that be causing a lot of trouble for Rejuvenation Valley? Therefore, for her own sake, she still had to comprehend the mnemonic chant to conceal her cultivation and spiritual sense. Taking out the jade slip, Zhang Xiaohua carefully read it for the first time. The mnemonic chant was very long, about 2,000 words. It was abnormally cryptic. Zhang Xiaohua read it carefully, but didn't learn anything. He couldn't help but smile wryly. Well, the average cultivation method of the way of immortality was not easy to understand or practice. The difficulty of concealing one's cultivation could be imagined. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that when she first started cultivating the Carefree Heart Sutra, it was abnormally simple. There were many things in the cultivation method that she didn't know how to understand. But after entering the way of immortality for several years, her aptitude seemed to have improved greatly. For example, the art of alchemy and the art of refining weapons. Although it was not easy, she could understand it carefully. Although she didn't have a master to guide her, she could still master it. Could the cultivation method of the way of immortality make people smarter? AI, who cares? Isn't it good to be smart? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. Who cares how it becomes smart? It's more important to comprehend the mnemonic chant. Then, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and pondered the first part of the mnemonic chant word by word. In the blink of an eye, when Zhang Xiaohua stood up again, the sky had gradually darkened. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Time was too short. She hadn't comprehended anything, and the day was about to pass. How good would it be if she could find a place to cultivate alone, and ignore the trivial matters of the world? But then this thought was strangled. Her mother, father, and other family members, Oyen Qiutong, Wen Hai, and the others' dreams, and Ye Qinyu, all of them entered her mind. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and couldn't help but smile. The world is so beautiful. Why don't I miss it? Cultivation is cultivation. Entering the world is also cultivating the heart. Tao follows nature. Tao follows nature. Then she felt the true qi in her body surge violently. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and hurriedly took out a jade talisman to set up a formation around the pill room. Then she took out 2 origin stones. After thinking for a moment, she threw out the crouching ox stone and sat cross-legged on it. It was rare for her to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra during the day. Ever since Zhang Xiaohua entered Rejuvenation Valley, she had been persistently comprehending the Tao of Heaven, and made up for her lack of understanding of the Tao of Heaven with the Qi Huang art. She also continuously improved in the areas of pill refinement and weapon forging. Most importantly, she had to refine Starlight and absorb Origin Qi every night to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. Her accumulation in these few months was quite deep, so when she gained something in her temperament, her mental cultivation method also improved. In the dimly lit pill room, Zhang Xiaohua's face was expressionless. She held a piece of origin stone in each hand, and all the pores on her body opened up, greedily absorbing the surrounding origin qi. When the origin qi in the pill room was completely absorbed, the origin qi in Rejuvenation Valley rushed toward the pill room. And now, Zhang Xiaohua's speed of drawing qi was very fast. Although the origin qi in the valley was much more than outside, it was too thin for Zhang Xiaohua. If Zhang Xiaohua greedily absorbed it, it would most likely cause irreparable harm to the medicinal herbs in the valley. At this moment, the results of Zhang Xiaohua's daily hard work in comprehending the Tao of Heaven appeared at this moment. The refined origin qi in her body, and the circulating vital qi in her meridians gradually changed under the influence of the Tao of Heaven. These changes were almost undetectable, but it was also these changes that caused Zhang Xiaohua's entire body to be branded with traces of the Tao of Heaven. Didn't the Qi Huang art mention the theory of the 5 elements? The 5 organs in the body were all of the 5 elements, and the 5 elements were some kind of rule of the Tao of Heaven. Under Zhang Xiaohua's comprehension of the Tao of Heaven, her body gradually showed signs of conforming to the Tao of Heaven. Although these signs were extremely small, they caused a chain of changes, such as the absorption of vital qi and origin qi. The crouching ox stone that Zhang Xiaohua was sitting on originally had a fixed speed of the qi of heaven and earth that was being drawn into her body. However, due to the slight change in the way that Zhang Xiaohua absorbed the origin qi, the qi of heaven and earth in the crouching ox stone suddenly seemed to have been summoned by something. It surged out of the crouching ox stone like a tide and crazily poured into Zhang Xiaohua's pores. The origin qi in Rejuvenation Valley surged into the elixir room, but this meager amount of origin qi could no longer attract Zhang Xiaohua's attention, so she did not absorb it. When the wild origin qi in the crouching ox stone entered her body, it immediately submitted to the radiance of the Tao of Heaven. It followed the meridians in her body and flashed in a regular pattern. It seemed slow but was actually very fast and sometimes slow. After an indeterminate amount of time had passed, countless rays of starlight shone down from the night sky, penetrating through the stone walls and enveloping Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings. At this moment, the starlight was surging. The refined starlight fused with his meridians, fused with his primary energy, and fused with his transparent bones. As the starlight fused with his bones, the red dots gradually increased in number, almost imperceptibly. In the Mudpill Palace, the layer of golden array talismans on the essence of herbalism suddenly sped up and emitted a mysterious wave. The starlight outside Zhang Xiaohua's body also seemed to have been summoned and was directly drawn into the golden talismans without any refinement. The talismans that had absorbed the starlight emitted a faint radiance. After spinning a few times, fine golden rays of light were emitted from each talisman and entered the tiny core in the middle of the essence of herbalism. The core became more stable, and the essence of herbalism seemed to have been replenished. It was mobilized more powerfully, and there were faint traces of the Tao of Heaven in its movements. Everything was so harmonious. Under the enlightenment of the Tao of Heaven, she was progressing in an orderly manner. She cultivated until dawn. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes. The flame in her eyes flickered abnormally. Zhang Xiaohua put away the crouching ox stone and pocketed the vitality stones. Only then did she check her cultivation level. This check was not a big deal, but it really made Zhang Xiaohua's jaw drop. Previously on the deserted island, he had broken through to the 6th level. Then he had slowly wandered around the early stages of the 6th level. He had not broken through for a long time. However, he also knew that this was a transition from the early stages of the qi refining stage to the middle stages of the qi refining stage. It was a change in the way of cultivation and could not be rushed. Earlier, there had been various signs of a breakthrough. That was why he took out the crouching ox stone yesterday and wanted to raise his cultivation level to the middle stages of the 6th level. But now, after a brief check, the vital energy in his body was surging. His vital energy flowed freely in his mind. The bottleneck of the 7th level was faintly visible. Was this not a sign of the peak of the 6th level? Could it be that last night's cultivation had directly skipped the middle stages of the 6th level? Zhang Xiaohua was a little incredulous. Ever since he started cultivating, he had always been down to earth, taking one step at a time. This sudden big step was not something he was used to. So he immediately sat down cross-legged and carefully observed to see if there was anything strange. After a long examination, he did not find anything wrong. Everything was normal. However, he felt that there was something different from before. He felt that this normal was not the same as before. Suddenly he laughed. He understood what was going on. Chapter 471. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a long time. And he suddenly understood why he felt that the true qi in his body was different from before. This difference was that the current true qi flow was too natural. It was as if this true qi was born to flow like this. There was no need for him to control it at all. Before this, the true qi flow was under Zhang Xiaohua's deliberate command. According to the records of the Carefree Heart Sutra, the true qi flowed in the orderly meridians. Now, although the order of the meridians was the same, the true qi flow had some subtle differences. Some meridians were faster, and some were slower. These speeds might not be the real speed, but it was the speed that Zhang Xiaohua perceived in his heart. This thing seems very familiar? Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and understood. Isn't there the taste of heaven's way in here? Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood that his cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds should be related to his comprehension of heaven's way during this time. Perhaps it was the result of a thin and thick head. In fact, it was precisely so. The improvement of cultivation was related to the state of mind. The higher the state of mind, the faster the cultivation. The state of mind was just a side of one's cultivation in heaven's way. The comprehension of heaven's way directly affected the cultivation of the state of mind. This state of mind cultivation had a huge impact on Zhang Xiaohua, a rookie who had just reached the initial stage of qi refining. It was just a few months of comprehension of heaven's way, and he directly improved his cultivation by a big step. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to understand some of the relationships, but then he had a new discovery. Under heaven's way, the flow of true qi was very harmonious. This inspired Zhang Xiaohua a lot. Yesterday, when he read the mnemonic to hide his cultivation, he was always puzzled. Now, referring to last night's progress, he felt that he seemed to have found the direction of a breakthrough. Striking while the iron was hot, Zhang Xiaohua took out the mnemonic again and studied it in detail. Zhang Xiaohua didn't put the jade slip away until the sky was bright. It was naturally impossible to make any progress in such a short time. But the smile on his face revealed the gains in his heart. After removing the formation in the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua happily practiced the Big Dipper Divine Fist. She looked at the sky and thought, "Little fish Nye should be here by now, right?" When he reached the entrance of the pill chamber, he saw Nye Qinyu walking over with a few disciples. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua coming out of the pill room, Nye Qinyu asked happily, "Did Brother Ren sense my presence again?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "I just woke up and wanted to take a walk." Then, she looked at Nye Qinyu's eyes and asked in surprise, "Little fish, what's wrong with your eyes?" Her hair was a little dark, and her eyes were a little bloodshot. Did she have insomnia last night? I heard that the most important way for a woman to maintain her beauty is to sleep. Nye Qinyu rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's nothing. I just wanted to pick out a pill formula for you, so I slept a little late last night. It's okay." Zhang Xiaohua felt warm in his heart and cupped his hands. "Little fish, it's been hard on you." Nye Qinyu's eyes reddened. "You still have a conscience. You saw that I slept late and still remembered to come out and welcome me. Forget it, this bit of trouble is worth it." Zhang Xiaohua didn't know what to say and only sighed in her heart. But at this moment, Nye Qinyu suddenly frowned and looked at Zhang Xiaohua strangely. Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose, her face and even her hair, but didn't see any ash or firewood. She could only look at Nye Qinyu strangely. Nye Qinyu felt embarrassed and rebuked. "Why are you staring at me?" Zhang Xiaohua responded like a bug and said, "Yeah, why are you staring at me?" Nye Qinyu giggled and said, "It's strange, Big Brother Ren. No matter how I look at you, you look different from yesterday. However, your nose and eyebrows are normal. Could it be that your temperament has changed?" But then she smiled and said, "But temperament can't be changed in a day." Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the great improvement in cultivation last night had such a miraculous effect? Could it really attract the attention of girls? He couldn't help but shake his hair and say with a smile, "I didn't expect that Ren Xiaoniao would have such a glorious day." "Ha ha ha," Nye Qinyu laughed and said, "Big Brother Ren, the more I look at you, the more you look like the person who only learned the 3-character classic for a few months." Bang! Zhang Xiaohua fell to the ground. It turned out that she had regressed. In fact, Nye Qinyu was exaggerating a lot. After last night's practice, Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation had improved greatly. The vital qi in her body and the elixir core in her mudpill palace were closer to the way of heaven, and had returned to her original state. Of course, this was only a night's practice. How could there be such an earth-shaking change? If Nye Qinyu didn't care so much about Zhang Xiaohua, how could she see the clues? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua stand up awkwardly, Nye Qinyu walked up to him and helped him wipe the dust off. She said with a smile, "Big Brother Ren, do you have to be like this? As the saying goes, gold on the outside is rotten on the inside. You're 100 times better than them." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua almost fell again. Nye Qinyu covered her mouth and said, "Okay, Big Brother Ren, I won't tease you anymore. I'll tell you about the elixir I'm going to refine today." Sure enough, the elixir today was different from the previous days. The steps were slightly more complicated, and there were more herbs. When Zhang Xiaohua used the Rejuvenation Valley's cauldron to refine the elixir, there were some difficulties. However, it was this setback that made Zhang Xiaohua's elixir refinement progress. The elixir refinement of the Way of Immortality was much more advanced than that of the Way of Martial Arts. However, it mainly relied on the control of spells. The fine control of temperature between the eyes and the hands was somewhat clumsy. It was just like how some martial arts moves were more exquisite than the Way of Immortality. As a result, Zhang Xiaohua's elixir refinement speed slowed down slightly. In addition, Nye Qinyu brought a lot of herbs, so she couldn't finish refining in the morning. Nye Qinyu accompanied Zhang Xiaohua with a smile, thinking that she had arranged everything properly. For the next 10 days or so, Nye Qinyu was like this. She constantly increased the difficulty of the elixir formula, and increased the number of herbs. She could always spend most of the day in Zhang Xiaohua's elixir room. Zhang Xiaohua only had time to refine her own elixir after she finished the homework that Nye Qinyu gave her. Looking at Nye Qinyu's appearance, Zhang Xiaohua often complained. I've become an old cow in the Rejuvenation Valley. I eat grass and flow milk. However, it was also this kind of hard work that not only did Zhang Xiaohua become more proficient in the elixir refinement method of martial arts, but she also comprehended the elixir refinement method of the way of immortality by analogy. She also had more understanding that her predecessors didn't have. The days passed by happily just like that night, when Zhang Xiaohua was using the cauldron to practice the Rejuvenation Valley's secret elixir, 3 Purities elixir. The Rejuvenation Valley's main hall was bustling with noise and excitement. This was the meeting hall that Zhang Xiaohua saw for the first time in the Rejuvenation Valley. In the main hall, Valley Master Nia sat on the main seat. On the guest seats on both sides, there were 6 people of different heights, short, fat, and thin. Behind them, there were also a few disciples in martial arts attire who stood solemnly. On Valley Master Nia's left was a skinny man in his 50s. He was dressed in martial arts attire and said in surprise, "Second brother Nia, are you really going to do this? This concerns the Rejuvenation Valley. If this guy has any ill intentions towards the incense sect and makes them unhappy, not only the Rejuvenation Valley, but the entire Jade Foundation Alliance will be in extreme danger." Valley Master Nia looked at the man with a smile and said, "Third brother Zwa, it seems like you still don't have much confidence in your second brother." Third brother C said stubbornly, "That's true, second brother Nia. When little you got into trouble previously, our entire Jasper Flower horse farm was going to be mobilized. But you insisted that we stay in the horse farm and not move around. Then you started some stupid martial arts competition to find a groom. You made a mess and almost got into trouble." At this moment, the old man with white hair and a messy beard who was sitting next to Valley Master Nia said, "Third brother Zwa, why don't you understand your second brother Nia's intentions? Isn't he just afraid that he'll fall for their trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain? Isn't he going to destroy our Jade Foundation Alliance while everyone is busy saving little you?" "Big brother C, I know that too. But I just feel that second brother Nia doesn't treat me as a brother. Seeing that little you is missing, I can't help at all." Big brother C said with a smile. "Isn't our weapon forging sect the same? They don't let us help at all, and only send out a few disciples to scout for information." A short and shrewd man sitting next to him said, "How many times have I advised you, third brother Zwa? Our Jade Foundation Alliance is bound together for good or ill. How can second brother Nia not treat us as brothers? Isn't it just because he knows that there's no news of little you, and that the enemy is secretly plotting against us? He definitely didn't succeed. It's better for us to stay put than to make a move." Third brother C gave him a sideways glance and said, "Sixth brother Ing, don't talk about me now. Of course, isn't your Ing horse ranch ready to go as well?" "Ha ha ha, enough of that." Someone who looked like Butcher Lou stood up and said, "Our little niece is still the lucky one. Not only is she fine, she even managed to find a good son-in-law. I heard that his martial arts and physical strength are top-notch. Even our weapon forging sect's little Lou isn't his match." Finally, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man said with a smile, "Fourth brother formation is just joking. Think about it, this Ren Xiaoxia is someone who has overcome all obstacles and defeated 6 generals. He even became the lord of the Spouse Joust competition. How can an ordinary person compare to him? If our Jade Foundation Alliance had someone like him, second brother Nia wouldn't have racked his brains to come up with a countermeasure." The weapon forging sect's fourth brother formation said mysteriously, "We didn't have such people before, but we can't say that we won't have any in the future. Hee, but this person is a good person and his martial arts are excellent. It's just that, second brother Nia, it's just that his background is really, little Lou told me last time. I even paid special attention to the sects of the pugilistic world near Tanha City, but I didn't hear of any famous sections. Second brother Nia, you're here to scheme, so don't make any mistakes. Come and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading." Chapter 472. But Boss C of the weapon forging sect smiled and said, "Beta School is indeed a very unfamiliar school, but don't worry. Second brother has always been steady in his work. How could he make a mistake? Maybe he took a fancy to this good son-in-law and wanted him to be his son-in-law." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. That's good. Little Yu has become a big child. She should have gotten married long ago and run Rejuvenation Valley well. Valley Head Nya smiled bitterly. I'm very happy and Little Yu is also very happy. It's just that Ren Xiaoxia seems to be neither friendly nor distant, and never mentions this matter. Also, if it wasn't for the incense cult, he would have left long ago. Then why are you sticking your hot face to his cold butt? Why did you agree to join the incense cult? Third brother Zhuo was even more puzzled. Boss C said meaningfully, Xiqing, why don't you ask your second brother to tell the whole story? Maybe your second brother has some use for him and has no choice but to do it? Valley Head Nya seemed to have known the current situation, and was not in a hurry to explain. When he heard Boss C's question, he calmly took out a porcelain bottle and handed it to Boss C. He said, Big brother, take a look at this blood replenishing pill. Blood replenishing pill? Boss C was obviously a little surprised. He turned around and saw a short man with sparkling eyes. Then he took the porcelain bottle. Boss C opened the lid and poured out a brownish-red pill. He looked left and right and smiled. Isn't this the blood replenishing pill that Rejuvenation Valley usually produces? It's only one size smaller. Could it be that Rejuvenation Valley also wants to cut corners? Valley Head Nya smiled. Big brother, you must be joking. Rejuvenation Valley has 1,000 years of reputation. How would I dare to fool them? The youngest Ing Laolu walked over and took the pill from Boss C's hand. He also looked left and right before swallowing it. Then he closed his eyes and savored the taste. After a while he opened his eyes and said in surprise, Second brother Nya, you really know how to hide good things. I've been weak in both chi and blood. I've used some blood replenishing pills from Rejuvenation Valley, but why aren't they as effective as yours? How could you hide such a good thing? Why didn't you share it with everyone? With that, he reached out to grab the porcelain bottle from Boss C's hand. Valley Master Nya's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He snatched the bottle back and put it into his pocket. He smiled and said, You're lacking in both essence and blood. Don't read the Jade Heart Sutra. It's much better than eating the blood replenishing pill. Ing Laolu chuckled and said, Aren't I taking advantage of my young age to enjoy myself? If I had reached your age, I would have been powerless long ago. Eldest C ignored Ing Laoyo's joke and stared at Valley Master Nya, asking, Laolu, what's going on? Looking at the gazes of his brothers from the Jade Foundation Alliance, Valley Head Nya recounted the entire sequence of events. Of course, he still remembered Zhang Xiaohua's instructions. Using the spring and autumn annals technique, he made it sound like Zhang Xiaohua had taught Rejuvenation Valley how to use inner energy. He made it sound like Zhang Xiaohua had read Rejuvenation Valley's ancient records and discovered a long-lost art of pill refinement. Everyone was astonished. Zhuo Xiqing said, Could it be that this Ren Xiaoyao is Rejuvenation Valley's Tianxi's son-in-law? Your Little Yu has been reading ancient records all day and didn't see it, but this kid managed to find it after just a few days of learning. Sai brother Yakong, alright, there's also brother Fu Hu, brother Zhen Xian, brother Zhizhu. Shouldn't you let this kid stay at your Tiger Subdue horse farm, weapon refinery sect and garrison horse farm for a while? Who knows, he might be able to help you guys find some long-lost art. Si Yakong smiled and said, I've had this thought for a long time. It's just that our weapon refinery sect doesn't have a clever girl like Little Yu who can capture his thoughts. When Valley Head Nya heard this, he could only smile bitterly and said, It's all luck. Brothers, don't think too much. Our Rejuvenation Valley has discovered a long-lost art. Isn't our Jade Foundation Alliance the first to benefit from it? Oh right, Ing Laolu, when Sui Jindan is successfully refined, I'll personally give you a porcelain bottle. I guarantee that you'll be able to move it as you wish, and it'll be incomparably sturdy. Really? Ing Zhizhu's eyes were filled with tears. He stepped forward and grabbed Valley Head Nya's hands, saying, Family. Then he asked, Second brother must have taken a lot of it back then, right? Go away. Valley Head Nya threw Ing Laolu to the side. Si Yakong said thoughtfully, Second brother, from what you've said, you seem to have let him refine pills in your valley? That's right, big brother. Valley Head Nya said excitedly. You don't know, but this kid is really amazing. Oh, maybe it's because his Beidou school is amazing. He doesn't seem to specialize in alchemy, but he's extremely talented in it. Take note, big brother, it's talent. When he first started refining, I could tell that he wasn't used to using that cauldron. That pill just now was refined by him. Ah, everyone was flabbergasted. Ing Zhizhu didn't dare to believe it. He said, the blood-replenishing pill you ate just now was much better than what I ate. Moreover, the pills you gave me were always refined by you. Could it be? Everyone understood. That's right, having such a genius alchemist was something that Rejuvenation Valley yearned for even in their dreams. Moreover, Rejuvenation Valley was indebted to this person, and Rejuvenation Valley wanted him to marry into their family. Presumably, he would agree to any conditions. The most important thing is, Valley Head Nya continued, through these few months of observation, this child is an unusually smart person. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who only knows how to be chivalrous, and doesn't put his own safety first. So you sent him to the incense cult to hone his skills. Who knows, he might be able to catch the eye of the incense cult. He might even become a disciple of the incense cult. Then you'll marry little you to him? Ha ha ha, second brother Nya, you're really counting your chickens before they hatch. Valley Head Nya was speechless when he heard this. He had gathered the brothers of the Jade Foundation Alliance to explain to them about Zhang Xiaohua going to the incense cult. After all, if there were any slip-ups and the incense cult blamed them, the entire Jade Foundation Alliance could suffer. But even before he said anything, these brothers had already twisted his meaning. Valley Head Nya originally wanted to explain, but when he heard them say this, his heart was moved. Since his brothers thought so, everyone in the Jianghu, including the incense cult, would think so too. Then, why did he have to make such a pointless explanation? Even if he told them about Zhang Xiaohua's idea, he couldn't just leave Rejuvenation Valley aside. Rather than that, he might as well keep everyone in the dark. If there were any slip-ups in the future, the incense cult might not punish them for not knowing anything. And if he hid this matter from them, how would Zhang Xiaohua thank him? Valley Head Nya couldn't help but think of his daughter's brilliant smile. After talking for a while, they heard Boss Si Yakong of the weapon-forging sect ask, second brother, has there been any movement from the Dragon Soaring Sword Village? Valley Head Nya turned to look at the ordinary-looking middle-aged man who hadn't spoken for a long time. The Soaring Dragon Mountains are very close to the Dragon Soaring Sword Village. I'll leave this matter to fifth brother. After all, the appearance of our men from Rejuvenation Valley there is rather sudden, and will easily attract their attention. Ma Fuhu of the Subdue Tiger Horse Farm said calmly, ever since second brother Nya told me about this matter, I've been paying attention to the movements of the Dragon Soaring Sword Village. On the surface, they don't seem much different from before. But after careful analysis, there are still some differences. Their second young master has been going out a lot recently and most of the time, he's heading north. He's always in a hurry and brings a large number of carriages with him. When he returns leisurely, there are only people and no carriages. Then where did they go? Can you find out? Boss Si asked. Mafuhu shook his head and said, second brother said to be careful. If there's no evidence of actual harm to our Jade Foundation Alliance, we shouldn't make a move. So I didn't send anyone to investigate along the way. Big brother, our opponent last time was abnormally strong. Rejuvenation Valley almost suffered a loss. Even the Dragon Soaring Sword Village was involved. I'm sure they're not easy to deal with. If there's nothing important, it's better to be on our guard. That's all we can do. If they don't provoke us, we won't be able to find any traces of them. Boss Si nodded and said. Then he said, fifth brother, keep a close eye on the Dragon Soaring Sword Village. Don't miss out on anything important. Mafuhu nodded in agreement. Si Yakong turned to ask Zhen Xian. I heard that when Lu Meng was at Rejuvenation Valley last time, he challenged Ren Xiaorao to a contest of strength. Zhen Xian was stunned and smiled. That's right? Even Big Brother knows about this? This Lu Meng has always been unyielding. Even his senior brother has been competing with him. But after returning from Rejuvenation Valley, he was full of praise for Ren Xiaoyao. Not only did he say how powerful his martial arts were, even his strength was the best of the best in the pugilistic world. not to mention his chivalrous heart and benevolent attitude. He said that Ren Xiaorao was the only one in the world. Si Yakong sneered, "That's right. If Ren Xiaorao had clenched his teeth, wouldn't he have handed over the weapon refining technique to him?" Zhen Xian smiled apologetically. "Big brother, look at what you're saying. Isn't this nephew Ren the future son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley? He's not an outsider. Moreover, I've already grounded Lu Meng for a few days. Even his senior brother wanted to come this time, but I didn't let him. I'm afraid they'll embarrass themselves again." Si Yakong laughed. "Why would I care about your weapon refining sect's matters? It's just that when he heard that you've embarrassed the weapon refining sect, my disciple felt indignant and wanted to compete with Ren Xiaoyao in terms of strength." Everyone present was shocked. Their eyes all turned towards the short man behind Si Yakong. Valley head Nye smiled bitterly. He had thrown this matter to the back of his mind. He had forgotten that Su Zhuang and Lu Meng from the weapon refining sect, as well as Tong Ba from the weapon refining sect, were all people with extraordinary strength. They were all in their prime and their qi and blood were at their peak. When they saw someone who could compete with them in terms of strength, how could they not come to their door? This was especially true for Tong Ba of the crafting sect. He had always been the strongest person in the Jade Foundation Alliance. Even Lu Meng paled in comparison to him. Now that someone even stronger than Lu Meng had suddenly appeared in Rejuvenation Valley, how could he possibly hold himself back? He had always valued Zhang Xiaohua's alchemy skills, but had cast her strength and martial arts aside. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 473. But Valley Master Nye still tried to persuade him. "Martial nephew Tong, your strength is publicly acknowledged in our alliance. Why do you care about some false reputation? Moreover, nephew Ren is a guest of Rejuvenation Valley. If you two compete in strength and hurt anyone, it won't be good. Don't let others see you as a joke." Then he waved his hand and said, "Let's leave this matter at that. Don't mention it again." Tong Ba glanced at his master and smiled. "Martial Uncle Nye, don't be afraid. It's just a competition of strength, not an arena. My future brother-in-law didn't lose out at all in the arena. How could he lose out when he's competing with his own people?" Valley Master Nye looked at Tong Ba in surprise and then at Si Yakong saying, "Why do you have to be like this? Right now, our Rejuvenation Valley wants to worship Ren Xiaoxia. How could we let him take the risk?" Tong Ba still refused to back down, saying, "Martial Uncle Nye is wrong. We live in the pugilistic world. How can we not have seen bloody storms? Moreover, it's just a competition of strength and not martial arts. What risk is there to speak of?" Valley Master Nye was a bit hesitant. Previously, he had asked Zhang Xiaohua to fight for Rejuvenation Valley and Nye Qinyu. He was very angry about the incident with Lu Meng last time. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't wash his dirty linen in public, he would have already lost his temper. But now this Tong Ba was actually challenging Zhang Xiaohua in front of him. What was going on? Moreover, the boss of weapon forging sect, Si Yakong, was also present. Could it be that being number one in strength was so important? Valley Master Nye looked unhappily at Tong Ba's arrogant and aggressive manner. Then he looked at Si Yakong, who was sitting on the chair and speaking repeatedly just now but now looked like he was asleep. He was secretly puzzled. Could it be that Boss Si acquiesced to this? He wants to suppress weapon forging sect? Then he looked at Zhen Xian from the corner of his eyes. Damn, that guy is also looking down like a Buddha. Could it be that he also saw through Boss Si's thoughts and is too embarrassed to speak? But Boss Si's weapon forging sect is already a head above weapon forging sect. Why is there a need to do this? How strange. Just as he was about to ask again, Tong Ba took a step forward and said, "Martial Uncle Nye, you've been blocking for Ren Xiaoxia and not letting him compete with me. How do you know that he's not willing to compete with me?" Valley Master Nye was stunned. This was the truth. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, he didn't seem like a person who was afraid of trouble. Moreover, his strength was obviously greater than Lu Meng's, so he wasn't necessarily afraid of Tong Ba. Tong Ba took out a small booklet from his bosom and said with a smile, I know this future brother-in-law is interested in refining weapons, but he's not considered a member of our union, so it's not convenient for Martial Uncle Nye to ask. These are some of the refining techniques of my weapon forging sect. If young Hero Ren is willing to compete with me, this book will be the prize for the competition. This. Valley Master Nye stared at Si Yakong with a frown. He had heard Nye Qinyu mention this before and knew that Zhang Xiaohua was interested in the weapon forging sect's techniques. But just as Tong Ba said, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't considered a member of the Jade Foundation Alliance, so it wasn't convenient for him to ask weapon forging sect's Si Yakong or weapon forging sect's Zhen Xian directly. He had to find a chance to ask in private, and this chance would be during the banquet later. At this time, Tong Ba actually placed the weapon forging sect's techniques in front of him, catching Valley Master Nye off guard. Valley Master Nye thought for a moment and looked at Zhen Xian, saying, Ren Xiaoxia wanted to use Lu Meng's booklet as the prize to teach him a lesson. He might not just want to see the weapon forging sect's techniques. Martial nephew Tong is thinking too much. Valley Master Nye was also an old fox. Since he didn't have anything on him, of course he wouldn't admit it. It wasn't a good habit to pry into the secrets of other sections. Soon after, he smiled and said, Since Martial nephew Tong is so well prepared, I'll have little you ask if Ren Xiaoxia is also interested in this competition. If he has anything to say, I'll immediately reply to Martial nephew Tong. What do you say, big brother Si? Si Yakong was forced to express his stance. He could only open his eyes and smile, saying, It's all because of the competitive spirit of the younger generation. Weren't we the same back then? Let them do as they please. Ren Xiaoxia is only half an outsider anyways. The goodies don't flow into the fields of outsiders. Valley Master Nye could only nod. Thus, everyone skipped over this matter and began to discuss Rejuvenation Valley's medicinal pills in detail. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua was bewildered when she heard Nye Qianyu's message. Why compete in strength for no reason? She had a pile of things she hadn't learned yet. Putting aside the art of pill refinement, that Crimson Flame pill was still waiting for her to refine, and she didn't seem to have much confidence in refining it yet. Even the rabbit talisman needed to be comprehended in a hurry. Oh right, there was also the incantation for concealing one's cultivation in spirit guidance. She was just about to refuse when she heard Nye Qianyu say with a smile. Moreover, senior martial brother Tong has even taken out the classics of the weapon forging sect for this competition as a prize. Big brother Ren, haven't you always wanted to look at the methods of weapon refinement first? If you can win against senior martial brother Tong, won't you be able to learn openly? Zhang Xiaohua smiled wryly. She had already obtained the jade slip of the weapon forging sect. Who would care about his martial way weapon refinement methods? However, if there wasn't such a prize, he would have refused. Now that the other party had come knocking with a prize, was there a need for her to refuse? Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, Little fish Nye, weapon forging sect's Tong Ba is obviously stronger than weapon forging sect's Lu Meng, but how much stronger is he? Nye Qianyu smiled and said, I only know that it's not much, but how much do I pay attention to? However, father said last night that it's a few 100 kilograms of strength. A few 100 kilograms? Zhang Xiaohua frowned even more. A few 100 kilograms of strength was naturally unattainable for ordinary people, but to Zhang Xiaohua, it was really too light. This is strange. Lu Meng's strength can't even lift my weapon. I'm sure Tong Ba also knows this. With such strength, how could he bring himself to be humiliated? Zhang Xiaohua said. Yes, big brother Ren is right. Nye Qianyu also explained. Father said this yesterday. Who would give away their sect's secret method of weapon refinement without a reason? Even if it's an ordinary method, it's still confidential. There must be something fishy about this, Zhang Xiaohua said. However, what did Uncle Nye say? Nye Qianyu nodded and said, Father thought so too, but he couldn't get anything out of him. During the banquet last night, Senior Uncle Si still kept his mouth shut. Therefore, Father asked you to go with the flow and see what's going on. Zhang Xiaohua said with a grin. Of course. Since it's a piece of meat that's delivered to my doorstep, why wouldn't I try it? Moreover, he didn't ask me to bet anything, so I won't bet anything. Even if senior brother Tong wins, I won't lose anything, right? Bah! Nie Qinyu couldn't help but spit and said, Father even asked you to bet something with that elixir of yours. You're good, trying to gain something without risking anything. Zhang Xiaohua said with an innocent face, I was refining elixirs in Rejuvenation Valley, and didn't provoke anyone. They came to stir up trouble and said I'm stingy? How about I don't agree to it? Nie Qinyu covered her mouth and snickered. Alright, you're always doing this kind of business anyway, and there are always people who are willing to be suckers like you. Speaking of this, Nie Qinyu suddenly exclaimed, Oh, that's right, I haven't given you the 20 taels of gold you got in the peach forest outside the valley. Father urged me last time, so I forgot about it. Then she looked at Zhang Xiaohua strangely and said, Big brother Run, did you forget about it? Zhang Xiaohua said with an honest face, No, how could I forget? Then why didn't you ask me for it? Are you a little embarrassed? Alas, look at me, I forgot about it. No, just take it. When the time comes, I'll give you a little more profit. Bah! Nie Qinyu almost spat on Zhang Xiaohua's face. So this was what this fellow was thinking. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nie Qinyu and smiled. Then what's Uncle Nie's arrangement? When and where will the competition be held? Nie Qinyu said, If you agree, we'll have the competition at Rejuvenation Valley's Martial Arts Hall tonight. When the time comes, all the leaders of our Jade Foundation Alliance will appear. Hee, other than the competition held every 2 years, it's been a long time since I've seen the Uncle Masters and Uncle Masters. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, Your Jade Foundation Alliance is so close? You even have to compete between the various sects? That's right. The Yuli Alliance is basically a sect that has been passed down for generations, and has a history of over 1,000 years. There have been changes throughout the years. In the early years, there were a few sects that were destroyed. However, as long as it's possible, they would rejoin the alliance. Father, you've been friends with the other Uncle Masters since you were young. Therefore, the disciples of our sects are all familiar with each other. Otherwise, why would I have said that Father would be able to obtain the weapon refining sect's weapon refining technique that day? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. What's the difference between this and a large sect? Nie Qinyu said in all seriousness. Of course, there's a big difference. Everyone has different cultivation techniques, and the projects they manage are different as well. If it's a sect, how tiring would it be to be a sect master? Zhang Xiaohua said, Perhaps, you were already a sect a few thousand years ago. Nie Qinyu shook his head. I don't know about that. Alright, let's not talk about it. Let's hurry up and refine the pills. Father knows that you're busy tonight, so he asked me to bring fewer herbs over. Huh? How did Uncle Nie know that I'd definitely be there tonight? Just like you? It's a waste not to take advantage of the situation. How could I not go? Uncle Nie really knows me well. At night, the candles were burning brightly. In the manner of Rejuvenation Valley, in an open-air courtyard towards the west, candles as thick as an arm and torches lit up the courtyard brightly. Right in the middle was a spacious area, with a row of tables placed on both sides. There was already wine and food on the tables, and the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley were placing other things on the tables. Come and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 474. By the time Zhang Xiaohua arrived at the courtyard under Nie Qianyu's guidance, a sumptuous feast was already placed on the main table and the 2 sides of the table. The leaders of the Jade Foundation Alliance were already seated. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qianyu, everyone stood up and came forward to greet them. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't be bothered to follow Nie Qianyu's small steps forward. She quickened her pace and bowed. Seniors, my apologies, my apologies. I've made you wait for so long. I've learned a thing or two from Lady Nie just now. I'm late. Si Yakong and the others didn't treat Zhang Xiaohua as a junior and returned the greeting. This old man is Si Yakong of Weapon Forging Sect. Ren Xiaoxia, you're too humble. You've lent a helping hand at the site of injustice and saved Rejuvenation Valley. We're all grateful, but we were afraid that our enemies wouldn't let this matter rest and would cause trouble to us. That's why we haven't come to thank you, Xiaoxia. Now that we've met, the first thing I'd like to say to you is thanks. Zhang Xiaohua now knew the relationships between the various sects in the Jade Foundation Alliance, and didn't feel that Si Yakong was interfering with Rejuvenation Valley's affairs. She smiled. Valley Lord Nye has already thanked me countless times and even let me see the pill formula. I've already recouped my costs. You don't have to say that. Besides, I don't even dare to listen to Lady Nye talk about pills anymore. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's words, Si Yakong was taken aback. He then laughed heartily. Ren Xiaoxia is indeed a straightforward person. Come, let me introduce you to Xiaoxia. With that, he introduced everyone. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, I've heard so much about you. As for how much she had heard, only he knew. When she saw the short Tong Ba, Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. Looking at this skinny person, how could he be the strongest person in the Jade Foundation Alliance? Tong Ba smiled and cupped his hands. Ren Xiaoxia, I've long heard Lu Meng praising you to the heavens. Now that I've seen you, you're indeed extraordinary. Later on, I'll have to ask Xiaoxia to teach me a lot. Let me see Xiaoxia's divine power. As he spoke, he looked around Zhang Xiaohua with disappointment in his eyes. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned for a moment before she understood. She smiled and said, I've also heard that Senior Brother Tong is the #1 divine power in our alliance. That's exactly what I want to see. Seeing this, Valley Master Nye laughed and said, All right, you two heroes cherish each other. Let's have a good chat later. For now, please take a seat. When everyone heard this, they all returned to their seats. Zhang Xiaohua also sat next to Valley Head Nye's table. Valley Head Nye looked at Zhang Xiaohua next to him and said, Nephew Ren, you've been to Rejuvenation Valley for several months and have visited most of the places in the valley. You've never been to this training ground, right? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, That's right. Uncle Nye's place is so rich in medicinal herbs and pill recipes that I've even forgotten to return. How could I have the energy to wander around? Valley Head Nye shook his head and said, In the pugilistic world, martial arts is still the most important thing. Pills and the like are only supplementary. You can't neglect the essentials and focus on trifles. Zhang Xiaohua knew that these were heartfelt words and nodded with a smile. Not long after, the banquet began. Everyone raised their cups and chatted and laughed. Ma Fuhu and Zhua Xiqing, the two younger ones, even came over from time to time to drink a few sips with Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua didn't really like drinking. However, this 100-flower wine from Rejuvenation Valley was indeed delicious and the alcohol taste wasn't too strong. Furthermore, Nye Qinyu had traveled with Zhang Xiaohua all the way here, and the attentive girl already knew Zhang Xiaohua's taste. She especially instructed her disciple to pour a particularly light wine for Zhang Xiaohua. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua gladly raised her cup. The most amazing thing was that these people only talked about romance and interesting things in the pugilistic world. They didn't ask about Zhang Xiaohua's situation in Beta School, nor did they ask about the reason why he went to spread the incense religion. This made Zhang Xiaohua's impression of the Yuli alliance improve. After more than 3 rounds of wine, there were only 5 dishes. Si Yakong cleared his throat and said, Everyone, the competition in our alliance was just held last year. It hasn't been this lively for a long time. Furthermore, it was also at this training ground in Rejuvenation Valley that our weapon forging sect disciple, Tong Ba, obtained the title of #1 in divine strength in the Yuli alliance. Oh, this title. At this point he turned to ask Zhen Xian, 4th Master Zhen, how many years has our weapon forging sect held this title? Zhen Xian pursed his lips and said, Boss C, how would I know? This is the reputation of your weapon forging sect. If you don't remember it yourself, why do you want us to remember it for you? With that, he angrily drank a cup of wine. Si Yakong smiled and looked around at the crowd. This disciple of mine has always been very competitive. When he heard that there was someone stronger than him, he kept looking for me, wanting to compete with Ren Xiaoxia in terms of physical strength. Of course, our weapon forging sect has always made a living by forging weapons. To put it bluntly, we are blacksmiths. In terms of martial arts, he definitely can't beat Ren Xiaoxia. Needless to say, but in terms of physical strength, I think that Tong Ba might be able to compete with Ren Xiaoxia, so I nodded in agreement. Also, I heard that Ren Xiaoxia is interested in weapon forging, so I took out one of our sect's secret weapon forging manuals as the prize for this competition. If Ren Xiaoxia can win against my disciple, this manual will be given to Ren Xiaoxia. Also, if Ren Xiaoxia has any questions while reading it, you can ask our weapon forging sect. I guarantee that we will answer all your questions. Tong Ba had already said this yesterday, and Zhang Xiaohua had also heard it from Ye Qianyu. But today, Si Yakong said it again as the head of weapon forging sect. This kind of sincerity made Zhang Xiaohua feel a little strange. That's right, she wasn't touched but a little strange. There seemed to be a little. As the saying goes, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. What was the purpose behind this secret weapon forging manual? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but secretly pinch her chin and think to herself. However, when he saw Valley Master Nie's somewhat astonished expression, he thought in his heart, even Valley Master Nie doesn't know. How mysterious. However, all of my things are in my money pouch, and I'm not afraid of you thinking about it. Let's see what you have in store. At this time, she heard Si Yakong say, however, this competition was proposed by our weapon forging sect. We didn't ask for Ren Xiaoxia's permission in advance, so Ren Xiaoxia doesn't need to prepare any prizes. He just needs to participate in the competition. When Valley Master Nie heard this, he opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but after trying a few times, he didn't know what to say. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua came out from behind the table and said with a smile, since Sect Master Si is so generous, I won't stand on ceremony. To be honest, I don't have anything valuable on me, and I don't have anything to use as a stake. Sect Master Si's arrangement is very suitable. When Ye Qianyu heard this, she lowered her head and laughed secretly. When Tong Ba saw Zhang Xiaohua walking down the stage, he also jumped out and cupped his hands. Then I'll have to ask Ren Xiaoxia to give me some pointers. Zhang Xiaohua returned the greeting, likewise. Senior brother Tong, please show mercy. Following which he asked, I wonder how the competition in our alliance is to test our strength? Tong Ba smiled and said, firstly, it's to see who can lift more stone weights. Secondly, it's to see who can pull who with the rope. However, I heard that junior brother Lu had a new competition method with you. Why don't we use your longsword? Zhang Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said, all right, but I don't have my long sword with me. Senior brother Tong, please wait a moment. I'll go get it. Tong Ba smiled. Let the disciples go get it. Ren Xiaoxia still needs to drink a few more cups. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, I'll go by myself. I'll drink later. Seeing that Nie Qianyu was about to get up, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and signaled for her to go. Then she turned and left. When she left the courtyard and came to a dark place, she turned around and burrowed into the ground. She came to the attic in the peach forest and took the long sword. Then she returned to the door with the long sword and came in with a smile. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had returned, Ingzhizhu laughed heartily and said, Nephew Ren is really able to keep his composure. When I saw that he didn't say anything a moment ago, I thought that he didn't want to compete with martial nephew Tong. But now that I see that he left in a hurry and came back in a hurry, I realize that he also has a competitive spirit in his heart. Zhou Siqing nodded. Yes, young people should be like this. Only Valley Master Nie and Nie Qianyu were shocked. They knew where the long sword was, and how far the attic was from here. Seeing that the long sword in Zhang Xiaohua's hand emitted a dark luster under the bright lights of the martial arts practice field, not only Tong Ba, but also Si Yakong and Zhen Xian had a fanatical look in their eyes. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and couldn't help but think, oh, I forgot that the weapon forging sect and the weapon forging sect make a living by refining weapons. They must have seen countless materials in the world. My long sword is so heavy that it must have attracted their attention. Of course, Lu Meng may have neglected it, but when he tells the master of the weapon forging sect, he will. Careless. However, since things had come to this, there was nothing to regret. He also wanted to know what the long sword was. Sure enough, Tong Ba looked back at Si Yakong and walked to Zhang Xiaohua. Is this the long sword that made junior brother Lu Meng lose? I think Ren Xiaoxia can hold it easily. Why don't you let me try lifting it? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and handed the long sword to Tong Ba. Of course, if senior brother Tong can raise both hands above your head, I will lose this round. What do you think? Her words were very generous and also looked down on others. However, with Lu Meng as an example, Tong Ba didn't dare to look down on her and only nodded. Let's do as Ren Xiaoxia says. After saying that, he stretched out both hands to take the long sword. Zhang Xiaohua saw that he had already gathered his strength and reminded him. Be careful, senior brother Tong, I'm going to let go. Tong Ba held his breath and didn't dare to speak. He nodded repeatedly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua let go of her hand, and the long sword fell into Tong Ba's hands. At this moment, the entire arena was silent. Only the crackling sound of the torches could be heard. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the small longsword fell straight to the ground as soon as it fell into Tong Ba's hands. Tong Ba's face was already flushed red, but he still couldn't stop it. Seeing that his hands and feet were about to be smashed, Tong Ba quickly let go and jumped to the side. With a muffled sound, it was as if the entire arena shook, and the longsword fell to the ground. Chapter 475. Tong Ba didn't know what to do. When he heard Lu Meng's rumor, he thought it was exaggerated. Perhaps Lu Meng was just trying to cover up his failure. How could there be something so heavy in this world? However, his master's eyes lit up when he heard the rumor. There were all sorts of strange things in this world. The weaponsmith sect made a living by forging weapons. The books in the sect naturally recorded all sorts of strange things. Tong Ba didn't know much, but Si Yakong knew. Even so, according to Si Yakong's estimation, even if it was a long sword or any other weapon, as long as it wasn't a huge hammer, Tong Ba wouldn't be unable to lift it. That was why Tong Ba was so confident in challenging Zhang Xiaohua. The longsword wasn't eye-catching. It was obviously a sword embryo. Tong Ba thought that it was impossible for him to not be able to lift it with his strength. Unexpectedly, he couldn't even catch it. Naturally, he turned around to look at his master who had promised him that he wouldn't embarrass himself. Si Yakong was even more surprised. He didn't expect this result either. He looked at Zhen Xian, who was also surprised. Then they stood up and walked into the arena. Zhang Xiaohua didn't seem surprised to see them. Wasn't the purpose of this competition to draw out his long sword? If the two master blacksmiths didn't come out, Zhang Xiaohua would really doubt her own intelligence. The two of them walked into the arena and cupped their hands. Ren Xiaoxia, your weapon is so heavy. We are very curious. Can you let us take a closer look? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Feel free to take a look. Zhen Xian waved his hand, and a disciple outside the arena brought a torch over. Zhen Xian took it and placed it on the long sword on the ground to take a closer look. At the banquet, Valley Master Nia seemed to have understood Si Yakong's intentions. He looked a little displeased. Zhang Xiaohua was his guest and wasn't an outsider. Since Si Yakong wanted to see the longsword, it wasn't a big deal to tell him about it. There was no need to make things so complicated. Why did they have to compete in strength and even reveal the secrets of the weaponsmith sect? However, Si Yakong was the big brother of the Yuli Alliance after all. It wasn't appropriate for him to say anything in front of Si Yakong, so he could only leave this grudge for later. Si Yakong and Zhen Xian held their torches and crouched on the ground. They approached the sword and looked at it carefully. Sometimes they rubbed it gently with their hands, sometimes they flicked the sword with their fingers, and sometimes they whispered something. However, as time passed, the two of them didn't look enlightened. Instead, they looked even more suspicious. Zhang Xiaohua looked at them with a smile. She wanted to ask them about it, but judging from their expressions, they probably didn't know the origin of the sword. So she turned to look at Tong Ba. When Tong Ba saw Zhang Xiaohua looking at him, he couldn't help but blush. Although he had an ulterior motive, and this competition was just a prelude, he couldn't even handle the other party's weapon. That was cough cough. He didn't deserve the title of number one divine strength. Zhang Xiaohua was about to speak when the two old scholars stood up. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Si Yakong frowned and asked, Ren Xiaoxia, this old man wants to ask you, where did you get this thing? Oh, this longsword. This question was a little reckless, but it also seemed very intimate. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I got it on a deserted island overseas. Deserted island? Overseas? Si Yakong was a little surprised. He quickly asked, Nephew, can you tell me the exact location? Well, she skipped Xiaoxia and changed it to nephew. This was almost a trap. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he took the opportunity to say, Uncle Si, of course, the ship encountered a storm and this nephew was blown into the sea. However, I don't know the exact location. Later on, I was lucky enough to return to land, but I forgot to ask around. Si Yakong was very satisfied with Zhang Xiaohua calling him uncle. Of course, he wouldn't doubt his answer. He turned to look at Zhen Xian. Zhen Xian thought for a while and asked, Nephew Ren, if it's convenient, can you tell me what the longsword looked like when you saw it? Oh, was it flat on the ground, or was it stuck in the ground, or... Wow, he's calling himself uncle too. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua said bluntly, Uncle Zhen, when I saw the longsword that day, it wasn't even on the ground. It wasn't on the ground? Not only were the two grandmasters surprised, but everyone else also exclaimed. However, there was obvious joy in the eyes of the two grandmasters. Then this longsword? Zhen Xian asked impatiently. Zhang Xiaohua looked at everyone and said, When I saw the sword, it was above a pool of magma. It was just lying there flat. There seemed to be something invisible below. At that time, I was scared to death. Ah, fire condensation technique? Si Yakong and Zhen Xian exclaimed in unison. Valley Master Nia and the others were shocked to see the two lose their composure. They all came forward and asked, What's the fire condensation technique? Si Yakong and Zhen Xian were a little embarrassed. It seemed to be the first time they lost their composure in front of everyone. Si Yakong coughed twice and said, The fire condensation technique is a refining technique that has been lost for thousands of years. It uses fire to condense raw materials into weapons. Oh, I see. Everyone nodded when they heard that. It was true. Anyone who suddenly heard about a technique that had been lost for thousands of years would have such a reaction. Sure enough, Si Yakong and Zhen Xian pulled Zhang Xiaohua aside and asked her about this and that. They inquired about the situation of the longsword clearly. However, so what if they saw it with their own eyes? If the refining technique of the immortal Tao could be learned with just one's eyes, how could the refining technique be lost? The two of them were addicted to listening, and then prepared to leave. Zhang Xiaohua was not happy. You asked me for so long, and now you're going to leave me alone after you've had your fill? She immediately grabbed the two of them and asked, Uncles, after looking at it for so long, I still want to ask, what is my longsword made of? How can it be refined into a real longsword? Si Yakong glanced at Zhen Xian. Zhen Xian said awkwardly, Nephew Ren, it's not that I don't want to hide it from you, but I really don't know either. I've already discussed it with Brother Si in detail just now. The things in this world are very magical. If we're talking about the heaviest thing, it's nothing more than black iron. It's only the size of a fist, and it's 10 times heavier than a normal piece of iron. If your longsword is made of black iron, it's only 10 times heavier than a normal iron sword. You can't let Nephew Tong be unable to handle it. Moreover, although black iron is heavy, it's not too difficult to refine into a weapon. Si Yakong also interrupted. In my opinion, your longsword was still in the process of being refined that day. Since the fire condensation method has long been lost and there aren't many people in the wasteland you're in, you can naturally infer how long this longsword has been refined above the magma. If it can't be successfully forged after such a shocking amount of time, how can I be confident that it can be refined into a real longsword? Moreover, weapons rely on nothing more than sharpness and weight. Nephew's longsword has no edge, but just based on its weight, who can withstand it? Zhang Xiaohua was silent. Didn't she use the weight of this sword to bully people all the way here? At this time, Si Yakong said again, Only the material of this longsword is unknown to me and Zhen Laosi. If we really want to make a far-fetched guess, perhaps some legendary black iron might be similar to your longsword. Black iron. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. It was the first time she heard this name. She couldn't help but ask, What's the origin of this black iron? Si Yakong looked at Zhen Xian and smiled. Well, we'll talk about this later. I don't think you're done competing with my disciple yet. With that, he returned to the banquet with Zheng Xian, hand in hand. That. Zhang Xiaohua reached out, wanting to pull them back. Was there a need to continue the competition? However, before she could reach out, they had already returned to the banquet, whetting Zhang Xiaohua's appetite. Seeing that his master had left, Tong Ba walked to the front of the longsword and said, Ren Xiaoxia, as you said just now, if I can raise this longsword above my head, I'll win. Zhang Xiaohua looked at him. No matter how she looked at him, he didn't look like someone who could raise a longsword. She could only nod and say, Please enlighten me, senior brother Tong. Tong Ba chuckled and cupped his fists at the people around him. He took a horse stance and took a deep breath. Then he stretched out both hands to hold the longsword. Then, with a loud shout, he actually lifted the longsword from the ground. The people of the Jade Foundation Alliance cheered loudly. Then Tong Ba mustered all his strength. The muscles on his arms twitched as he forced himself to raise the longsword. Seeing this, the disciples who had finished drinking also cheered him on. Under Tong Ba's gnashing teeth, the longsword slowly moved upwards. However, his trembling legs betrayed his bottom line. By the time he raised the longsword to his chest, he couldn't raise it no matter what. His face was so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out. Then a hint of unwillingness flashed in Tong Ba's eyes. He let go of the longsword and just like before, it fell to the ground with a clang. Tong Ba helplessly cupped his fists and said, Ren Xiaoxia is indeed a god power. This foolish brother. This foolish brother is truly impressed. From now on, I won't dare to call myself the Alliance's #1 god power. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said, Senior brother Tong's words are strange. This one isn't a member of your alliance. Why would you call yourself the #1 god power? Tong Ba smiled bitterly and said, #1 god power, #1 god power. I can't even lift Xiaoxia's weapon. How can I call myself the #1 god power? After saying that, he looked very dejected. He took out the small booklet from his chest and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. He said, Ren Xiaoxia, this is what you deserve. Please accept it. However, it contains the secrets of my weapon forging sect. Xiaoxia, please keep it a secret and only use it for yourself. Don't pass it on to anyone else. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to come to the weapon forging sect and find me, or my master. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the small booklet and really wanted to take it. However, she still refused and said, how can I accept this? Chapter 476. Nie Qianyu, who was watching intently at the side, was laughing in her heart. She had personally witnessed how Zhang Xiaohua tricked Lu Meng, and knew that Zhang Xiaohua really wanted to know how to refine weapons. Therefore, this booklet from the weapon casting sect catered to her interests. How could he not want to get his hands on it? Tong Ba shook his head and said, No, apart from the importance of this booklet, it's also a prize in itself. Xiaoxia deserves it. It's just that I'm a frog in a well and overestimated my abilities. Xiaoxia, please don't take it to heart. Zhang Xiaohua chuckled and said half-heartedly, You're welcome, you're welcome. Senior brother Tong's divine power is also amazing. Didn't you just say that you've been the #1 divine power for many years? As she spoke, she reached out to take the booklet. However, when she used her strength, she realized that Tong Ba had no intention of letting go. She had no choice but to use more strength in her hand and said, I'm very envious of your sect's refining techniques. I want to see how this weapon is refined. I'll definitely keep it a secret and won't divulge the contents of this booklet. Zhang Xiaohua thought, I've already complimented you and practically swore. Are you still not going to give it to me? However, when she used more strength, wow, Tong Ba still didn't let go. Zhang Xiaohua could only look straight at Tong Ba and smiled. I still have to thank senior brother Tong for your guidance. If there's a chance, I'd like to exchange pointers with you. Great. She had even threatened him and he still wasn't letting go? At this moment, Si Yakong, who was sitting at the banquet table behind Zhang Xiaohua, spoke. Nephew Ren, this booklet is a small token of our sect's appreciation. Please accept it. Also, I have a presumptuous request, but I don't know if it's appropriate to say it. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Xiaohua staggered. Nonsense, Tongba had already let go. She was listening to sect leader C, and was caught off guard. Looking at the booklet in her hand, Zhang Xiaohua secretly complained. I knew there's no such thing as a free meal in this world. Look, the show is about to start. Io, that's not right. Didn't I show them my sword just now? Do they have other requests? Don't tell me you want my sword? However, since she had already gotten the booklet, it was impossible for her to give it to Tongba. Tongba took advantage of the time when Zhang Xiaohua was in a daze and walked back to the banquet. Sigh, old master, since you know it's a presumptuous request, then it's best that you don't say it. Since you said it in front of me, how can I not let you say it? Zhang Xiaohua looked at the crowd and cupped her hands. Thank you for your kind intentions, sect leader C. However, if it's something too difficult, please forgive me for not daring to casually agree. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua call him sect leader C, Si Yakong smiled bitterly. The distance I tried so hard to pull apart has been pulled apart again. However, if I don't express my goodwill first, it's really hard for him to open his mouth. Beside them, Valley Master Nia was also puzzled. He really didn't understand why this big brother of weapon forging sect was doing this today. He looked at the two of them and smiled. Nephew Ren isn't an outsider anymore. Big brother C, if there's anything you want to say, it's better to say it first. Your way of doing things seems like you're acting first and reporting later. It's no wonder that nephew Ren is a little reluctant. Seeing that Valley Master Nia had stepped forward to be the peacemaker, Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. Beside them, Nia Qinyu was a little anxious. She had called Si Yakong uncle since she was young. Seeing how Uncle Si was so generous, it must be something important. It wasn't as simple as looking at the long sword as she had thought. She understood Zhang Xiaohua's temper. She hated being schemed against the most. Oh, of course, she also loved to scheme against others. Looking at his expression, he was a little unhappy. Nia Qinyu hurriedly said, Uncle Si, father's words make sense. You're an elder, so it's not convenient for me to say anything. However, Big Brother Ren has always been a chivalrous person. If you want him to get rid of the evil and help the weak, just say the word and he'll do it. Think about it, I was just a weak girl back then and Big Brother Ren was just a passerby. Just as Nia Qinyu was about to finish her sentence, Si Yakong said in a clear voice, Little you, you're right. Sai, this matter is rather important. I've thought about it over and over again before doing this. If I've embarrassed nephew Ren, I'll apologize. After he finished speaking, he left the banquet and went forward to bow. Zhang Xiaohua's words just now had already provoked public anger. She didn't dare to let the old man bow at this time. She hurriedly went forward to support him and said, Uncle Si, listen to what you're saying. I'm just informing you first. If it's really too difficult, don't mention it. I don't want to make it difficult for me to agree. If you think I can do it, just say it. I won't hesitate. Si Yakong was still hesitant. He said, This matter is indeed very difficult. I'm afraid you won't agree. Gosh, Zhang Xiaohua cried in her heart. She said, Since Uncle Si knows it's difficult, then don't mention it, okay? Si Yakong's face was full of disappointment. He nodded and said, Sai, okay. Since you said so, I won't embarrass myself. Just pretend I didn't say it. When everyone heard this, they all knew that this was a very difficult matter. Zhang Xiaohua might not be able to do it, so it was better not to mention it. Everyone's face would be better. Only Nia Qinyu rolled her eyes and said with a smile, Uncle Si, I'm a little curious. Why don't you tell Big Brother Ren this? Why don't you tell me? Si Yakong looked at Nia Qinyu, then at Zhang Xiaohua. He opened his mouth but still shook his head and said, Sai, forget it, forget it. I might as well not say it. Seeing the old man so dejected, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't bear it and said with a smile, Since Miss Nia asked Uncle Si, you should tell her. She's always been curious. If you don't tell her, she'll be thinking about it all night. She might even harass you in the middle of the night. Ahaha. Everyone laughed. Nia Qinyu spat and said, How would I know how to harass you? She stopped halfway through her sentence. Everyone's expression was strange. Zhang Xiaohua's expression was even more unnatural. Why do you have to drag me into this? Si Yakong also laughed out loud. Seeing this, he said, actually thinking about it, it is indeed somewhat difficult. This involves Nephew Ren's sect, the Big Dipper sect. I think Nephew Ren can't make the decision himself. Seeing that everyone was at a loss, Si Yakong coughed and said, I'm sure everyone still remembers the arena that second brother Nye set up at the entrance of Rejuvenation Valley Manor a few months ago. Of course, who didn't know? In the last round, Nephew Ren showed his prowess in the arena and knocked 4 people out of the arena. He even took 2 lives because of it. When this happened, this old man and a few other members of the alliance weren't present. As for the specific details, we only heard it from second brother Nye later. Everyone was puzzled. What did this have to do with the current situation? Si Yakong continued. I'm sure everyone knows the details better than I do. However, Nephew Ren's 4 opponents were strange. When second brother Nye told me about it, he only said that they knew a set of combined attacks, and that it was a formation that the 5 of them used together. This shocked me greatly. I'm sure second brother Nye has forgotten that our weapon forging sect had a set of lost 5 elements Dian formation. Not only can it be used to forge weapons, but it can also be used to defend against enemies. Zhang Xiaohua's expression was very interesting when she heard this. 5 elements Dian formation. Valley Master Nye almost cried out. He trembled and said, Boss C, don't deceive me. I know that your weapon forging sect had this formation thousands of years ago, but it's been lost for a long time. Those few little thieves on the arena made a few gestures. Was that weapon forging sect's secret technique? What do you know? Si Yakong blew his beard and glared at him. Do you think I'm talking nonsense? Don't you remember how I asked about it in detail? Aren't you annoyed? This. Valley Master Nye looked embarrassed and said, Big brother, I really didn't expect it to be so serious. I thought that it was just a set of 5 people's combined attacks. Atonement. However, a bitter smile appeared on his face soon after. Nonsense. The 5 elements Dian formation sounded like a very powerful thing. On that day, there were only 4 people on the stage, and they had already beaten the others down. It could be seen how powerful the real 5 elements Dian formation was. Of course, it was possible for Rejuvenation Valley to beg Zhang Xiaohua to help, but it would be extremely difficult for her to pass on this formation to you. This was not even comparable to Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes. Although Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes were precious, many of them were collected. He only had a small portion of them, and he couldn't refine them himself. If he wanted Zhang Xiaohua to help him refine them, he naturally had to show her. However, this formation might be the only one in Beidou school in the world. It was definitely a secret technique. How could she take it out so easily? Valley Master Nye looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said to Si Yakong, Big brother C's request is really making things difficult for Nephew Ren. Even if Nephew Ren wants to teach, he still has to see if the elders of Beidou school are willing. That's right. Now that I think about it, I just said that I had some fantasies and was eager to get this 5 elements formation from Nephew Ren. I'm really a little obsessed. I'm ashamed. Seeing Si Yakong's loneliness and disappointment, the expression on Zhang Xiaohua's face became more and more interesting. He really didn't expect weapon forging sect to be after the 5 elements formation. When Nye Qinyu mentioned it to him yesterday, he felt that there must be something to it. Just now he thought it was a longsword, but after thinking about it, he didn't expect it to be this formation. To be honest, this 5 elements formation was one of the most common formations he knew. He only needed to cultivate a little to become proficient in it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to break it so easily in the arena. However, was it appropriate for him to give away something he regarded as trash so easily while others treated it as a treasure? Si Yakong had already given up on this idea. He felt that he had been carried away by his enthusiasm a few days ago. He smiled and said, Let's go. Everyone, please take your seats. It's rare for us to taste Rejuvenation Valley's 100 Flowers wine. We must enjoy ourselves to the fullest. Everyone responded, and was about to take their seats again. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua said in a clear voice, It's not like I can't consider Uncle C's request. Chapter 477. These words were very normal, but in Si Yakong's ears, they were like the sounds of nature. He immediately turned his head and asked in a trembling voice, "Run. Xiaoxia's words aren't false." His tone was one of complete disbelief. Zhang Xiaohua smiled faintly and nodded. "Does sect head Si think I'm joking?" No. Si Yakong was quite excited and hurriedly explained. "This old man just didn't think that nephew would be so generous. You're even willing to give such an important thing to my weapon forging sect." "Give?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head again and said, "Sect head Si overestimates my beta school. Not to mention that this 5 elements Dian formation has been lost for thousands of years, and that my sect only obtained it under an extremely coincidental opportunity. Even my sect's cultivation methods and formations cannot be given away casually." Zhang Xiaohua looked at Valley Head Nia and smiled. "But if we give it away like this, people will think that it's not real. They will also think that my beta school is rich and overbearing. Of course, we can't give it away for free. Even if this one were to give it away, the sect's elders would still punish this disciple. However, Uncle C has the demeanor of an elder. You're not like some gangs who want to get something and say that it's theirs. They'll use the glorified name of taking it back and think of all kinds of dirty tricks. Just based on this, I'm willing to make a fair deal with sect head C." Valley Head Nia said, "Of course. Nephew Ren, Beidou school doesn't belong to you alone. This formation also doesn't belong to you alone. It's necessary to give a good explanation to the sect head. Don't you think so, big brother C?" Si Yakong seemed to have woken up from a dream and immediately said, That's right. It's good that Beta School is willing to pass this formation to my weapon forging sect. How could my sect snatch it away by force? Moreover, this 5 elements Dian formation was passed down to my weapon forging sect by a senior expert thousands of years ago. Who knows, this senior expert might be from your Beta School." Zhang Xiaohua laughed inwardly, but said in all seriousness, Uncle C, if that's the case, then our 2 factions already have a history." Ing Zhizhu immediately clapped his hands and continued, "That's great. Since you're related to the weaponsmith sect, then you're related to our Jade Foundation alliance as well. That's great. No wonder nephew Ren looked so familiar." "I'm going to faint." Zhang Xiaohua felt like vomiting blood. She thought to herself, "Do I look that simple?" Valley Master Nia glanced at Si Yakong and said in a low voice, "Nephew Ren, I just don't know what your sect leader and elders want to exchange for this formation." Si Yakong also eagerly chimed in, "That's right, nephew Ren. When you went out, what did the elders in the sect say?" "This." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, then said, "The headmaster didn't make it clear. It's just that Beta School hasn't been involved in the world for a long time, so we're not too clear about the market conditions of the Jianghu. We'll just take those precious things back home and report back. I think that Uncle C is an elder, so you won't mistreat me, right?" "Of course. How could I let nephew Ren fail to report back?" Si Yakong hurriedly replied. With that, he took out a short sword and handed it over, saying, "Nephew Ren, take a look at this treasured sword. What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned, thinking to herself, "What do I need this treasured sword for? It's better to get a jade scroll. Even if it's useless, it's still good to give me 2 weapons that can be used in the immortal Tao. Oh right, it's called a magic weapon in the General Principles of Weapon Refinement." Zhang Xiaohua didn't want to brush off Si Yakong's face, so she casually took it. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's expression, Si Yakong already knew that she didn't like it very much. However, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua didn't know the value of this short sword, so he smiled and said, "Nephew Ren, it's better if you take out this short sword and take a look." Zhang Xiaohua took the short sword and looked at the somewhat old and worn scabbard. She already looked down on it from the bottom of her heart. Hearing Si Yakong's words, she casually took out the short sword. With a schwa sound, the short sword was out of the scabbard. Zhang Xiaohua stared at it and couldn't help but let out a "ee." She saw that the short sword was about the same length as the short sword used by the bronze-masked old man. The blade at the front of the hilt gave off a blue luster under the bright lights. The luster flowed along with the flickering lights like flowing water. Seeing this, Si Yakong smiled and said confidently, "The 4 famous swords in the pugilistic world, Dragon breaking, wind slaying, gold cutting, and water breaking, each have their own masters. Our weapon forging sect can't compare to them. Although this jade water sword is unknown in the pugilistic world, and can't be compared to the 4 famous swords, it has its own uniqueness that the other famous swords in the world don't have. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but use her divine sense to scan it. However, that jade water sword didn't give off the slightest fluctuation of vital energy. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but shake her head. Seeing this, Si Yakong laughed softly and said, "Nephew Run, try to send the vital energy in your body into this short sword. Then you'll know how wonderful it is." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and smiled bitterly. The vital energy in her body wasn't the internal energy of martial arts. This vital energy wasn't vital energy. Even if she sent it into the short sword, what use would it be? Glancing at Si Yakong, Zhang Xiaohua still sent a wisp of vital energy into the jade water sword in her hand. That wisp of vital energy wasn't a big deal, but that jade-green water-like splendor suddenly rippled. Startled, Zhang Xiaohua sent another wisp of vital energy. At this moment, the tip of the short sword trembled, and a few wisps of sword light actually shot out. Sword light! Ing Zhizhu cried out involuntarily. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly withdrew her vital energy. That jade water sword's light faded, and it returned to its previous tranquility. Si Yakong was also a little surprised. He cupped his hands and said, "Nephew Run, I didn't expect your internal energy to be so exquisite. I thought you could only force out a wisp of brilliance." Zhang Xiaohua flipped her hand to look at the short sword. She asked with interest, "Uncle Si, what's going on? This jade water sword was refined by your honorable sect?" Si Yakong looked at the jade water sword with a reluctant expression. He said, "Nephew Ren, you must know that our weapon forging sect and weapon forging sect can refine some weapons that can increase one's internal energy. These refining methods were all researched by a senior several thousand years ago. As for who this senior is, I won't tell you. The only thing I want to tell you is that this jade water sword is this senior's proud work. It can also be considered one of our weapon forging sect's cornerstone treasures." "So it's like that," Zhang Xiaohua muttered to herself. This short sword was indeed not bad, but she didn't seem to be able to use it. Although her own small sword couldn't see light, its power was extraordinary. Although the incomparably heavy sword wasn't sharp enough, it could still crush people to death. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua returned the jade water sword to Si Yakong. She said, "Master Si, this sword is your honorable sect's treasure. How can I take it away from you? Please take it back." How could Si Yakong be willing to take it back? He waved his hand and said, as the ancients said, "Treasured swords are given to heroes. This sword should be kept by a sect that specializes in martial arts like your honorable sect. Fortunately, this jade water sword isn't very famous. If it were to be known by some experts, it might bring disaster to my weapon forging sect." Zhang Xiaohua knew that this was an excuse. The weapon forging sect made weapons. If they didn't have any good things, who would believe them? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua still didn't say anything, Si Yakong was a little anxious. He turned his head and shouted at Tongba, "Quickly bring me my brocade pouch." When Tongba heard this, he hurriedly stood up and walked to the side. He brought over a pouch that was placed on the side. This pouch was different from the usual ones. It was made of a pitch-black material and was rectangular in shape. Si Yakong reached out to take it, and led Zhang Xiaohua to an empty table. With a shake of his hand, he poured out the contents of the pouch onto the table. He said, "If Nephew Ren isn't satisfied, you can take whatever you like from this table. Take whatever you like." This sect Master Si is quite generous. It seems he is determined to obtain the 5 elements Dian formation. Zhang Xiaohua pondered a bit and thought, "If I don't pick anything, it would seem like I was being pretentious. Sai, let's see if there are any jade slips or something." The items in Si Yakong's pouch were very messy. It was scattered all over the table, but there were no jade slips. Zhang Xiaohua scanned it with her divine sense and couldn't help but frown. She pointed at 3 pitch-black sticks and asked, "Sect Master Si, what are these?" Si Yakong also looked at the 3 short sticks strangely. After thinking for a long time, he hesitated and said, These seem to be the handles of the 3 flags I found in the secret room last year. They were all covered in dust, so I casually took them out. How did they end up in my brocade pouch? Where did the flags go? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and asked. My sect master likes some ancient jade items. Oh, not the kind with exquisite carvings. As long as it's a jade pendant or jade piece, the older the better. If sect master C can give me a few pieces, I'll take them back and report back. Jade pendant? Si Yakong was a bit embarrassed and said, I won't hide it from nephew. My weapon forging sect really doesn't have the kind of thing you're talking about. If it's a normal jade item, the sect does have some, but they're all a bit old and have exquisite carvings. Is that so? Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly and was about to speak. Si Yakong suddenly slapped his forehead and said, Oh, I remember now. I do have a strange thing here. I think your sect master will like it. After he finished speaking, he put his hand into his chest and was about to take it out, but there was some hesitation on his face. He looked at Valley Master Nye and gave him a look. Valley Master Nye understood and sent out the few disciples in the martial arts practice field. Seeing that the idle people had all left, Si Yakong said apologetically, Nephew, please don't blame me. This thing is a bit strange. If more people know about it, it may be disadvantageous to both our sections. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua immediately became spirited and asked, Now can Sect Master C take it out and take a look? Si Yakong mysteriously took his hand out of his chest and held a small booklet in his hand. A martial arts secret book? Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. What use did this thing have for her? Si Yakong shook his head and said, Nephew Ren, don't be anxious. Take a look first. As he spoke, he opened the booklet and handed it over. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and took the booklet. She lowered her head and looked at it. When she saw the contents of the booklet, she couldn't help but be shocked. Calm. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 478. This was a booklet similar to the Carefree Heart Sutra. It was the same size and the quality of the pages were the same. However, what surprised Zhang Xiaohua was that the booklet was completely white without any words at all. Zhang Xiaohua was greatly surprised and raised her head to look at Si Yakong. Si Yakong smiled and said, Virtuous nephew, take a look at the cover. Zhang Xiaohua closed the booklet and saw that the cover of the booklet had 4 ancient words written on it. Wordless heavenly book. However, the word heaven was different. It was written in a flamboyant style, as if it was about to soar into the sky. Although the other 3 words were also very charming, their charm was much weaker. Could it be that the other 3 words were added later? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and carefully observed the booklet. Sure enough, there was a faint vital qi fluctuation on the booklet. It was actually a restriction of the immortal Tao. However, there was a slight flaw in the restriction where the word heaven was written on the cover, revealing the original heaven on the cover. The other 3 words were written on the cover by someone later. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Needless to say, this was obviously a secret manual that recorded some immortal cultivation technique. It might even be more precious than the Carefree Heart Sutra. At this time, Si Yakong explained, Virtuous nephew Ren, this is a mysterious wordless heavenly book that has been passed down from generation to generation in my weapon forging sect. It has been more than 1,000 years since my generation. However, I have exhausted all methods and still have not been able to uncover the mystery within. I see that your sect's leader and elders like ancient jade pendants, so I think they must have some methods to decipher the secret of this heavenly book. I will give this heavenly book to your sect now. I only hope that if your sect's elders can decipher it, they will record a copy of the contents and send that copy to my weapon forging sect. What do you think? I see. Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's hesitation, Si Yakong said, I know that the textless heavenly book is of great importance. If it were to be leaked, it would bring great trouble to you. However, you don't have to worry, nephew Ren. Those who have nothing to do with it have already been cleared out by second brother Nye. The people who remain here will not reveal anything. The textless heavenly book has also been kept in our weapon forging sect for 1,000 years and has not been revealed to the public. In the future, the people of our Jade Foundation Alliance will definitely not mention anything about it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "That's right. Your sect's senior is quite interesting. Although there's a heaven character in it, of all the other characters, he just had to add such a sensational name. If others knew about it, they would definitely think that it was some kind of peerless martial art manual. It would be strange if they didn't go to your weapon forging sect to steal it." Si Yakong nodded and said, "What you said makes sense. It's just that this book is extremely mysterious, and it's also completely empty. The seniors in the sect used this to detect the other 3 words. Zhang Xiaohua declined to comment and said, "What if the seniors in my beta school can't decipher the mystery?" Si Yakong smiled bitterly and said, "This heavenly book has been in our weapon forging sect for 1,000 years, and still hasn't been deciphered. It's better to find a sect that we trust to decipher it for us. Nephew Ren's chivalrous heart must have been influenced by the seniors in your sect. Therefore, although I've never met the seniors in your sect, I'm still very confident in your beta school. Rather than letting this heavenly book gather dust in your weapon forging sect, why don't you give it to your seniors to decipher?" Then Si Yakong paused and said, "If you can't decipher this heavenly book, then don't return to weapon forging sect for a day." The people who were listening looked at each other in dismay. Si Yakong was betting too much on this. Not to mention the contents of the wordless heavenly book. If Beta School took this heavenly book and said that they couldn't decipher it, then wouldn't this heavenly book be given to them for nothing? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was also moved. She thought for a moment and said, "Sect Head C, since you're so confident in my Beta School, then I'll make a decision for the seniors in my sect. Our 2 sects have a time limit of 20 years. If my Beta School can't decipher it, then 20 years from now, we'll let this heavenly book return to weapon forging sect. What do you think?" Si Yakong's wrinkled face smiled like a tangerine peel. He stepped forward and pulled Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, "Nephew Ren, how do you want this old man to thank your Beta School? This is really..." Zhang Xiaohua was very embarrassed when Si Yakong pulled her hand. She said, "It's okay, Sect Hetsi. Everyone in my Beta School is magnanimous. Even if the seniors know that I acted on my own accord, they won't blame me. They'll only reward me. Don't worry." That was because this guy was the only person in this illusory Beta School. Who would blame him? Si Yakong was very grateful. He pointed at the table full of things and said, "Nephew Ren, you don't have to be so polite. Take everything on the table. Consider it a small token of appreciation from my weapon forging sect." How could Zhang Xiaohua be willing to take it? She repeatedly refused and said, "I'm not going back to Beta School. What's the use of taking so many things? I still only want those 3 flagpoles." "You only want 3 flagpoles?" Si Yakong was very puzzled. However, when he thought about it, it was normal. Renbachian was going to spread the incense cult in a while. It wouldn't be convenient to bring so many things. Thus he said, "How about this, Nephew Ren? This old man will leave these things first. When you're done spreading the incense cult, I'll invite you and your seniors to visit my weapon forging sect. This old man will prepare some gifts." Finished speaking, he placed the 3 pitch-black flagpoles in Zhang Xiaohua's hands. Seeing that the gifts were really too light, he chose a piece of material from the many items and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. He said, "This is a rare refining material. Nephew Ren, take it." Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua didn't hold back anymore. She reached out and took it. She looked around and smiled. "Sect Head C, if it's possible, there's no harm in giving your brocade pouch to me. I see that this brocade pouch is also a good thing. I just happen to have a bag with me. I'll use it to store things." When Si Yakong heard this, he smiled and said, "Of course, Nephew Ren has good eyes. This old man's brocade pouch is something that's impervious to water and fire. It's perfect for storing things." Finished speaking, he picked up the brocade pouch that was thrown on the ground and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua received it with a smile. She put the material and the 3 flagpoles inside. When Nie Qianyu saw this, she obediently found an ordinary bag and handed it over. Si Yakong took the bag and asked, Nephew Ren, you really don't want to take more? This old man's brocade pouch is quite big. It's so light to put so little things inside. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, Next time I go to weapon forging sect with my seniors, I'll pick some good things. Si Yakong laughed loudly. He swept the things on the table into his pocket and handed it back to Tong Ba. When Valley Head Nia saw that Si Yakong's intentions were fulfilled, he was also happy. He had everyone return to the banquet and called out his disciples. He reorganized the banquet and ate until the moon was high and the stars were sparse. During the banquet that followed, Zhang Xiaohua didn't drink much. When she saw that it was getting late, she stood up and bid farewell. Seniors, it's getting late. Forgive Nephew Ren for taking her leave. Uncle C, please stay in Rejuvenation Valley for a few more days and wait for Nephew Ren to finish writing the formation. When everyone saw this, they all stood up to send her off. Nie Qianyu also took the opportunity to leave the banquet and took Zhang Xiaohua out of the martial arts field. Zhang Xiaohua naturally wouldn't let Nie Qianyu take her back to the inner valley. She only made an appointment with Nie Qianyu for tomorrow's time. When she saw Nie Qianyu enter Peach Blossom Nunnery, she turned around and went back to the pill room. Lighting the lantern, Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the prayer mat and took out the jade water sword from her bosom. Zhang Xiaohua had always thought that only the martial way's internal energy could be sent into a weapon and be magnified by the weapon. She didn't think that her own internal energy could also be sent into the jade water sword, and that it would produce some kind of sword ray. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to scan the surroundings. When she didn't find any abnormalities, she held the jade water sword in her right hand and slowly sent her internal energy into the short sword. When she was in the martial arts field, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to truly let go of her hands and feet. She only released a little bit of her internal energy. When she saw that there was something strange about the short sword, she immediately stopped. Now that there was no one around, she wanted to see the true use of the short sword. As expected, when Zhang Xiaohua sent her internal energy into the short sword, the jade water sword suddenly emitted a blue light. At the tip of the sword, a so-called sword ray suddenly appeared. Its length was indeterminate, and it was constantly expanding and contracting. When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, she was overjoyed. She increased the amount of her internal energy, and the sword ray became longer. When Zhang Xiaohua sent in more than 60% of her internal energy, the sword ray and the length of the short sword were actually 2 times longer than an ordinary long sword. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to send in more internal energy, but the light of the short sword was scattered. It seemed that it had reached its limit. If she forced her internal energy, the short sword might collapse. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua maintained 60% of her internal energy and didn't send in any more. At this time, in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, there was clearly an exceptionally resplendent and dazzling long sword. Zhang Xiaohua was very satisfied with this result. She waved her right hand and casually made a few strokes with the sword. Looking at the stone table to the side, she had an idea. She waved her arm and lightly chopped at a small corner of the stone table. With a soft chi sound, the small corner fell to the ground as if she didn't put any strength into it. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She hurriedly went over to take a closer look. The stone table that was cut off was unusually smooth. The effect was even better than her own short sword. Seeing the sword ray of the short sword in her hand fluctuating according to her thoughts, Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought. The short sword was an immortal weapon. If she fought with it in her hand, she would lose her advantage. Moreover, that incomplete sword technique was only useful with a flying sword. It wasn't appropriate to use it on an ordinary long sword. Although the short sword in her hand wasn't long enough, with the sword ray, it was longer than an ordinary long sword. When she found an exquisite sword technique in the future, it shouldn't be inferior to her short sword or long sword. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's mind couldn't help but wander. She had just heard Si Yakong say that the 4 great divine swords of the pugilistic world each had a famous name. Even this short sword was called the Jade Water Sword. Her short sword and long sword didn't seem to have any names. What should I name it? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. This short sword wins by speed. under the control of divine sense. It's like a meteor streaking across the sky. It's just that the name meteor seems to be a bit cliché. That's right. I seem to have given this short sword to little Meng. It's best if there's the word Meng in the name, hee. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a trace of sweetness in her heart. At the same time, Nie Qianyu's face, which could be angry or happy at the same time, quietly appeared in her mind. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 479. Enju Meng. If it wants to chase after the speed of a dream, wouldn't it be even faster than a shooting star? Moreover, it has the intention of chasing after little dream, so it's her. Zhang Xiaohua gave her small sword an extremely romantic name, Zhu Meng. She couldn't help but feel excited. Striking while the iron was hot, she also gave her ugly long sword a name. Long swords were known for their heaviness, so of course they had to appear in the name. At this moment, the words Motionless Wisdom King suddenly appeared in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. Motionless Heavy Sword? Wisdom King Sword? None of them seemed to suit her. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. She thought of two words. Prajna, a great wisdom that surpassed everything. The long sword used its heaviness to defeat the enemy. It was a classic example of great skill not working. Any skill, any wisdom in front of this weight was just a paper tiger. It was an existence that surpassed all wisdom. Yes, it was the Prajna heavy sword. Zhang Xiaohua happily held the great wisdom sword in his left hand, while his right hand held the jade water sword, which was constantly expanding and contracting with its jade green sword aura. He loved it so much that he could not bear to part with it. With a thought, Chasing Dream also flew into the sky of the pill room. In that instant, Zhang Xiaohua felt as if he was competing with all the heroes in the world. After admiring it for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put Zhu Meng and jade water into her money pouch. She then took out the 3 flagpoles that she had just obtained from sect head Si Yakong. Feeling the coldness of the flagpoles in her hand, and the waves of vital energy emitted from them, Zhang Xiaohua's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. This was the only thing that sect head Si had thrown onto the table that emitted waves. How could Zhang Xiaohua not choose them? Looking at the 3 flagpoles, Zhang Xiaohua very naturally thought of the 3 talents formation in the auspicious 3 treasures hands. Wasn't it also formed by 3 array flags? The 3 talents flag formation wasn't a very special formation in the immortal Tao. Even the 5 elements Dian formation was a bit stronger than it. Presumably, there must have been many sects in the ancient times that understood this 3 talents flag formation. Therefore, it wasn't strange for weapon forging sect to have 3 extra flags. However, only 3 flagpoles were not enough. Where did the flags on the flagpoles go? Without any hesitation, Zhang Xiaohua picked up the brocade pouch that she had gotten from sect leader Si, and placed the precious weapon refining material into the pouch. Then she flipped the brocade pouch over and examined it carefully. She then took out her jade water sword and used the tip of her sword to pick something on the brocade pouch. After a while, 3 pieces of black cloth bigger than her palm were cut off from the brocade pouch by Zhang Xiaohua. Then, she threw the brocade pouch with 3 holes to one side. With a smile on her face, she looked at the 3 triangular pieces of cloth in her hands that were made of an unknown material, and were emitting waves of vital qi. Weren't they the flags? It was no wonder that sect leader Si Yakong couldn't remember where he threw the flags. It turned out that someone had used them as rags to mend his brocade pouch. If Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense hadn't sensed the waves coming from the brocade pouch that was thrown on the ground, who would have thought of this? Zhang Xiaohua picked up a flagpole with his left hand and a flag with his right. Looking at the flawless flag, Zhang Xiaohua knew that this small flag must have used up all of its energy for the people from the weapon forging sect to be able to pull it off the flagpole. He had to put the flag back on, but it wasn't something that could be done with needlework. Only by grasping the method to refine the flag would he be able to successfully refine the 3 flags. It was a pity that the general principles of weapon refining only had the basics of weapon refining and ordinary weapon refining techniques. Although the flags used for this level of flag formation were ordinary, it didn't cover anything. She could only look at the flags and sigh. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Didn't she still have the prize for her strength competition with Tong Ba tonight? She wondered if there was a method to refine weapons in the book. However, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have too much hope. The flags used for the three-talent flag gate formation were weapons refined using the immortal Tao. At most, weapon forging sect was using martial arts techniques, so they wouldn't leave behind such records. Sure enough, after Zhang Xiaohua put everything into his money pouch, he took out the small booklet. Inside the booklet were all the refining techniques used by the weapon forging sect. The techniques and methods inside were exquisite, and were things that Zhang Xiaohua had never seen before. However, if he wanted to use them to refine a small flag, it would be wishful thinking. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and placed the booklet on the table. It seemed that she could only place her last hope on the textless heavenly book. However, although there was a small hole in the cover of the heavenly book, the restriction inside was still very strong. It wasn't something that Zhang Xiaohua could break at this moment. Perhaps the dream-chasing sword could break this restriction, but the pages of the book were inside the restriction. If she wasn't careful, or there was a problem when breaking the restriction, the pages or the contents of the book would be damaged. Not only would Zhang Xiaohua not be able to obtain the complete contents of the heavenly book, she wouldn't be able to answer to weapon forging sect, even 20 years later. Therefore, after hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua decided to study the weapon forging sect's booklet properly first. When she had time in the future, she would think about how to break this restriction. It was getting late. Zhang Xiaohua finished taking stock of her gains, then sat down cross-legged, and began her routine cultivation. Of course, before she started cultivating, she didn't forget to set up a formation to seal off the pill room. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was cultivating, in the outer valley of Rejuvenation Valley, where the Jade Foundation Alliance's sect masters had been discussing, they were all seated at their respective positions. They were sipping on fragrant tea and discussing. Valley Master Nia said, "Big Brother C, you've been a little rash today. During such an important period, you should have discussed this with me first. Let little you probe him first. If it doesn't work out, we'll think of something else. If Ren Xiaoxiao agrees, it won't be too late for us to discuss this further." Si Yakong cupped his fists and said, "Second Brother Nia, this is all my fault. I'll apologize first for not giving you a heads up first. It's just that you don't know this. I've thought of many possibilities during this period of time, but I was afraid that Ren Xiaoxiao would reject me. That's why I had no choice but to take the risk. Think about it, if he had rejected little you earlier, how would I be able to open my mouth now?" Zhen Xian said, "It's a good thing that this Ren Xiaorao is really generous. He's even willing to teach us such a wondrous formation. I really don't know how this Beidou school teaches its disciples." Ing Zhizhu, however, smiled and said, "He didn't suffer any losses at Beidou school. He's already gotten so many things." Ma Fuhu also said in surprise, "Big Brother C, it's one thing for you to give him the Jade Water Sword, but that textless heavenly book is a priceless treasure. We've never heard you talk about it before. Aren't you going too easy on them by giving it away so casually?" When the others heard this question, they also looked at Si Yakong. Si Yakong took a sip of tea and said with a bitter smile, "The textless heavenly book, the textless heavenly book. Just hearing this name sounds like a great disaster. How would I dare to reveal anything about it? Don't forget that the Misty School in Pingyang City is a major sect with tens of thousands of years of history. It was also because of some martial arts secret manual that the Fragrant Cult, the Great Forest Division, and the Righteous Alliance joined forces to exterminate it. If they knew that our weapon forging sect has the textless heavenly book, regardless of whether there are martial arts secret manuals in it, wouldn't they have long come to kill us? Any one of the three sects can easily wipe out our weapon forging sect." Everyone nodded. Si Yakong continued, "This textless heavenly book has been in our weapon forging sect for thousands of years. Only the sect masters of each generation know about it. After so many years, no one has been able to decipher its secrets. No one knows what's recorded in it. I've been thinking about this all day, and it's like a fishbone stuck in my throat. I can't eat or sleep in peace. I'm afraid that this secret will be revealed one day and bring disaster to our weapon-forging sect. That's why I came up with this idea in a flash. Since we're going to pay a huge price in exchange for the formation, we might as well take out something that can shock people. Although this heavenly book is a huge treasure mountain, if we can't find the path to it, we can only think about it. Everyone nodded. Only Valleyhead Nya was a little dejected. Yes, you're giving this hot mountain of treasure to Beta School as a big favor, and promising to share it with them. However, at the same time, you're transferring a huge risk to Beta School. During the 20 years that it would take to return the textless heavenly book, the Beta School would have to risk being tracked down by various sects in the pugilistic world. Moreover, if the Beta School didn't return the textless heavenly book after 20 years, as long as the weapon-forging sect slightly spread the news, wouldn't the Beta School become the target of public criticism? Of course, Valleyhead Nya still believed in Siyakong's character. Perhaps he wouldn't do such a thing, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that the others in the weapon-forging sect wouldn't have such thoughts. However, Valleyhead Nya also understood Siyakong's intentions. There was no free meal in this world. If the Beta School didn't have a diamond, then don't take on a porcelain job. Since you heard the name of this secret manual and still wanted to accept it, then you had to pay a certain amount of risk if you wanted to covet the martial arts secret manual inside. Thinking about it, benefits and risks coexisted. At the same time, Valleyhead Nya also understood the profound meaning behind Zhang Xiaohua's promise to return the heavenly book after 20 years. Seeing Siyakong's somewhat proud expression and the gloating expressions of the others, Valleyhead Nya couldn't help but feel a little dejected. This is the pugilistic world. Although there is family and warmth, there is also. Valleyhead Nya couldn't bear to continue thinking about it. The night passed silently. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua woke up as usual. After practicing the Big Dipper magical fist, she was about to stop when her heart suddenly moved. Like a sudden impulse, she practiced the Big Dipper magical fist again. As early as a few months ago, Zhang Xiaohua could only draw in 9 streams of cold to temper her bones. She knew that this was her limit and didn't try to practice it again. A few days ago, Zhang Xiaohua's accumulated strength suddenly broke through to the peak of the early stage of refining qi. Her cultivation had increased by a lot. Today, she tried it again and sure enough, there was an unexpected gain. The 10th stream of cold actually came from her toes. Following the moves of the Big Dipper magical fist, she tempered all the bones in her body for the 10th time. The Big Dipper magical fist advanced again. As for what level the Big Dipper magical fist was at, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to calculate. As long as she had the cold stream to temper her bones, who cared what level it was? Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua secretly decided that in the future, she would practice the Big Dipper magical fist again after she tempered her bones. She didn't want to miss the time to level up her fist art. The 11th time of the Big Dipper magical fist didn't produce any cold stream. Zhang Xiaohua didn't care. After she stopped, she returned to the pill room and began to comprehend the rabbit talisman. Seeing that she needed to break more and more restrictions, if she didn't improve her cultivation of restrictions, she might delay things. Chapter 480. After a long time, the sun had already risen high in the sky. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and was somewhat puzzled. Normally, Nye Qinyu would have already skipped over at this time. Why is there no movement today? Will something happen? As Zhang Xiaohua pondered, she was about to release her divine sense, but at this moment, she heard footsteps outside. Just by hearing, Zhang Xiaohua knew that Nye Qinyu had arrived. However, her footsteps were somewhat slow today, as if she was extremely unhappy. Zhang Xiaohua got off the bed and walked over. Sure enough, she saw Nye Qinyu's somewhat hesitant figure in front of the pill room with a faint worried expression. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come out, Nye Qinyu forced a smile and said, "Big brother Ren, you're up?" Zhang Xiaohua was very curious and said, "Little Yuer, it's strange today. Why are you speaking so formally? I always wake up very early, and you know that. Did something happen?" Nye Qinyu opened her mouth and looked as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, She took out the 4 treasures of the study from behind her and handed them to Zhang Xiaohua. Big brother Ren, father asked me to bring these over. Yesterday, you already promised Uncle C that you would impart some 5 elements dye information to her. Father doesn't know how you'll impart it, but he's afraid that it'll be the same as the way you imparted to us, so he told me to bring these things over. Zhang Xiaohua didn't take them and only smiled. That's right. However, just like last time, I'll still say it and you'll copy it. Upon hearing this, Nie Qianyu's expression changed greatly. Big brother Ren, I'm afraid that's not good. This is the secret manual of your Beidou school. It's fine if you exchanged it with the weapon forging sect. After all, they gave you a lot of benefits. If you let me copy it, wouldn't that be? Nie Qianyu knew very well that she had kept a copy of the 5 elements dye formation in her heart. She had indirectly given a copy of the formation to Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. I've only studied the 3-character classic for a few months. With my writing skills, I don't know when I'll be able to finish copying it. Besides, if sect leader C can't understand it, won't you blame me for keeping it to myself?" Nie Qianyu's heart was filled with warmth. She smiled and said, "My Rejuvenation Valley doesn't have any Jade Water Sword or Jade Blood Sword for you. And I don't have any heavenly book with words for you. Then give me the most precious thing in your Rejuvenation Valley," Zhang Xiaohua said casually. This. Nie Qianyu's face flushed red, but she didn't know what was the most precious thing in Rejuvenation Valley. As Zhang Xiaohua walked into the pill room and arranged the brush and ink, Nie Qianyu couldn't help but say, "Big brother Ren, you've been so generous to my Rejuvenation Valley. I have something to say to you." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Little you, or when did you learn to be so refined?" "I asked you just now. If you have something to say, just say it. We can be considered as friends who have gone through life and death together." Hearing this, Nie Qianyu gritted her teeth and said resolutely, "Actually, big brother Ren, it's enough that you obtained the Jade Water Sword last night. Why do you still want Uncle C's heavenly book? Uncle C is my family's elder, so I shouldn't talk about him behind his back. But at that time, I felt that there was something fishy about it. It was just that I couldn't interrupt or stop you under the circumstances. After thinking about it last night, I still felt that it was inappropriate." Thus, Nie Qianyu told Zhang Xiaohua about her thoughts last night in full detail. She actually had the same thoughts as the 6 sect leaders of the Jade Foundation Alliance. In the end, she said, "But oh, big brother Ren's final deadline of 20 years is indeed very clever. Firstly, it shows the generosity of your sect, and secondly, it gives weapon forging sect some peace of mind." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Since when had she thought so much about it? She just felt that she had already obtained a lot, so it was inappropriate to take another heavenly book from him. But seeing that Si Yakong was sincerely giving it to her, she set a deadline of 20 years. Actually, according to his plan, if everything went smoothly, he would be able to break the restriction in a few years and see the contents inside. This deadline was just a casual offer. However, Zhang Xiaohua was secretly amused. This weapon forging sect Si Yakong has really put in a lot of effort for the sake of his sect's interests. Not to mention how much preparation work he has done to obtain the 5 elements dye formation. He has also racked his brains for this heavenly book. It's really hard on him. Unfortunately, this young master's Beidou school is a non-existent sect, so there's no way to find someone to take the blame. If this young master is unhappy, I'll find a place to hide and make you cry." Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't say anything, Nie Qianyu thought that she had touched on his heart and made him unhappy. Thus she advised, "However, big brother Ren, you don't have to take it to heart. Although it's best not to accept this heavenly book, since you've accepted it, you should quickly find a time to return it to the sect and let the elders in the sect unravel its mysteries. Perhaps there really is a secret martial art manual that can be used to develop the sect. Even if you can't unravel it, you should return it to Weapon Forging Sect as soon as possible. Uncle C of Weapon Forging Sect doesn't seem to be the kind of treacherous person who would say one thing in front of others and another behind their backs. He was probably forced into a corner and came up with this idea on the spur of the moment." Soon after, She thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "Furthermore, with the friendship between my Rejuvenation Valley and weapon forging sect, I don't think Uncle C will have any bad intentions towards you." Seeing Nie Qianyu's adorable bashfulness, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Little you, if you hadn't said it so clearly, I really wouldn't have thought of so many things. I really don't know how to thank you. Sai, as the ancient saying goes, don't have the heart to harm others, but don't have the heart to guard against others. I'm still too trusting of others." Nie Qianyu pursed her lips and smiled. Big Brother Ren is kind-hearted and magnanimous, so the heavens will always take care of you. You just have to be a little more careful in the future. Then don't mention anything about thanking me again. Zhang Xiaohua laughed heartily and said, "All right, I won't mention it, I won't mention it. Then you don't have to give me the most precious thing in your Rejuvenation Valley. Consider it my thanks." "Pay." Nie Qianyu couldn't help but spit out. After telling Zhang Xiaohua the words in her heart, Nie Qianyu felt much more at ease. Thus, under Zhang Xiaohua's guidance, she began to copy the 5 elements Dian formation. The copying of the formation wasn't like the previous bewitching finger, which was ready-made from books and could be copied. However, this 5 elements Dian formation was imprinted in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. Moreover, there were many changes to the formation, so she couldn't explain it clearly in a short time. She could only explain it bit by bit and copy it bit by bit. In the next 20 days, Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qianyu would copy the formation in the morning in the pill room. At noon, they would take the copied formation out of the inner valley. As for whether Nie Qianyu would copy another copy to keep in Rejuvenation Valley, or directly give it to Si Yakong, it wasn't something that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to know. In the afternoon, he continued to ask Rejuvenation Valley to provide him with pill formulas and medicinal herbs, so that he could familiarize himself with refining medicinal pills. Zhang Xiaohua led a carefree life, and her experience in refining medicinal pills steadily increased. However, Nie Qianyu was exhausted. On one hand, she had to copy the formation and understand it. On the other hand, she had to prepare pill formulas for Zhang Xiaohua. At first, she was quite happy. Not only could she learn the formation to protect Rejuvenation Valley, but she could also see Zhang Xiaohua every day. However, after a few days, she felt that she couldn't take it anymore. What kind of formation was the 5 elements Dian formation? Although it was a basic formation of the immortal Tao, Nie Qianyu, who didn't understand the immortal Tao at all, couldn't understand it. It was only because she was talented and exceptionally intelligent that she was able to understand a thing or two and memorize the formation under Zhang Xiaohua's painstaking efforts. Therefore, after a few days, the task of preparing the pill formulas for Zhang Xiaohua was personally taken over by Valley Head Nie. She had given Rejuvenation Valley the 5 elements Dian formation for no reason. Shouldn't you provide her with some convenience? If it weren't for the fact that it would be embarrassing, Valley Head Nie would have personally gone to the pill room to learn and copy the formation from Zhang Xiaohua. As for the other members of the Jade Foundation Alliance, apart from Si Yakong who remained in Rejuvenation Valley, the others had all returned to their respective sections. Every day, Si Yakong would receive 1 or several pages of the 5 elements Dian formation. Looking at the familiar handwriting, Si Yakong smiled bitterly. He had put in so much effort and given so many treasures, but they couldn't even compare to a daughter. If he had known earlier, he would have given birth to a daughter of his own. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty or because he was afraid of delaying Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation. Si Yakong had never visited Zhang Xiaohua in the pill room. Zhang Xiaohua didn't mind either. She continued to copy the formation from her mind to her paper, according to Nie Qianyu's progress every day. Although Si Yakong vaguely had the intention to scheme against Zhang Xiaohua didn't hide anything. She only explained the 5 elements Dian formation as it was in the immortal Tao, and combined it with her own martial cultivation, turning this 5 elements formation into a formation that could be used in the martial Tao. This formation was much more complicated than the one used by the 4 people in the arena that day. It took her more than 20 days to record it down. Today, Nie Qianyu put away her brush and sighed. "Brother Ren, let's stop here for today. I'm really tired. I've been copying this formation for more than 20 days, and I still haven't reached the end. I can only copy this much every day. Any more and I'll have a splitting headache. Zhang Xiaohua smiled. I was the same when I was learning that day. You've already done very well for those who are worse than you. Although the foundation of this formation is simple, the changes within it are very complicated. If we slack off, your Uncle C will be out of luck. After this period of learning, you should also know that if we don't fully grasp it and others find a flaw, the entire formation will collapse. It's better not to use the formation. Nie Qinyu nodded slightly. She also knew that not only Weapon Forging Sect, but Rejuvenation Valley was also learning this 5 elements formation. She had no choice but to give it her all. Zhang Xiaohua continued. Anyway, the copying is more or less done. It'll be finished with a few more changes. It'll only take a day or 2. That's right, Brother Ren. The day is approaching. If it was a few years ago, the incense cult would have already sent people to Rejuvenation Valley by now. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She frowned and said, the incense cult always comes to Rejuvenation Valley on a fixed date. It can't be that they won't come this year, right? Calm. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 481. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's worried look, Nie Qinyu smiled and said, Don't worry, Brother Ren. The fragrance cult doesn't come to Rejuvenation Valley on a fixed date, but the year is fixed. They should be coming this year. This has been a tradition for hundreds and thousands of years. Even if Rejuvenation Valley encounters a disaster, the fragrance cult will still come. There's no reason for them not to come this year. Zhang Xiaohua patted his chest and said, Not bad, you gave me a big scare. The two of them chatted for a while more before Nie Qinyu brought the book back to the outer valley. As usual, Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the straw futon and comprehended the rabbit talisman. After such a long period of comprehension, Zhang Xiaohua had already comprehended more than half of the 365 talismans. Now, it was the 183rd talisman. However, Zhang Xiaohua had already comprehended the 183rd talisman for 3 days without any progress. After a long while, Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes dispiritedly. Ever since he started comprehending the rabbit talisman, only the first few talismans were slightly difficult. Later on, he could comprehend a few of the simple ones in a day, and one of the complex ones in 2 days. However, he had already comprehended half of the talismans for 4 days, and there was no sign of a breakthrough. Could it be that he had reached a bottleneck? After pondering for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua decided to put the rabbit talisman aside for the time being. After all, there were still many things that he needed to cultivate, such as restrictions and formations. He had yet to fully comprehend a portion of the Jade Scroll left behind by Venerable Fire Dragon. Perhaps it was because of these weak foundations that the rabbit talisman was in a predicament. However, after 20 days of cultivation, Zhang Xiaohua's restrictions had entered a new stage. He wanted to see if there were any restrictions on his body that needed to be broken. Zhang Xiaohua first took out the few Jade Scrolls left behind by Venerable Fire Dragon. With Zhang Xiaohua's current level, he could already see that the restrictions on these Jade Scrolls weren't too complicated. However, the method to break the restrictions was related to his cultivation. If he hadn't cultivated the Carefree Heart Sutra to the last stage of Qi refinement, he probably wouldn't be able to break the restrictions. It was better to hide them deep in the innermost part of his money pouch. After that, he immersed his divine sense into the Jade Scroll that he had obtained from the Ethereal Mountain Villa's library, and carefully observed the restrictions within. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua thoughtfully withdrew his divine sense. The restrictions on this Jade Scroll was indeed marvelous. Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation was still lacking. However, he wasn't depressed. The more marvelous, the more precious it was. This must be an important technique. As long as he put effort into it, there would be a day when he would be able to break through it. As long as he worked, he would be able to break through it would be sooner or later. As long as he worked hard, there would be a days. His work. Cultivation. This seems to be the second time I've encouraged myself like this while looking at this Jade Scroll. Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and couldn't help but think to himself. Originally, there was a pair of jade bracelets in the money pouch. There was also a restriction on them that Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense couldn't penetrate. Since he still couldn't break the restrictions on the Misty School's jade scroll, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to take out the jade bracelets. He directly looked at the textless heavenly book. Ever since Nie Qianyu revealed Si Yikong's intentions that day, Zhang Xiaohua had been somewhat slacking off. Sometimes, he thought that he might as well put the textless heavenly book in the money pouch. After a few years, he would return it to the weapon-casting sect, who would be able to break it for them. Sometimes, he also thought that he didn't care. Since the weapon-casting sect let the beta school break it, he would just directly use violence. Who would care about the contents of the textless heavenly book? If it was broken, then it was broken. Who could guarantee that it would be completely good? Besides, even if it was broken, he could just use a similar restriction to cover it up. Would Sect Head C be able to find any clues? This weapon-casting sect is really too much. Why didn't they give me some shabby jade scroll? It's not even as good as the weapon-casting sect. That Lu Meng even gave me the general principles of weapon casting. This general principles is really not bad. Although I've never truly entered the weapon casting sect, I've learned a lot from this general principles. It's a pity that there's no specific refining method. Even if I have the flagpole and small flag of the tripartite flag array, I can't refine it. It's also a pity that Tongba gave me the refining method. It's only a martial cultivation method. Although there are a lot of things I can learn from it, it's still an unorthodox method. I can't use it. I should think of a way to get some sort of refining jade scroll. Zhang Xiaohua was still a bit hesitant as she tossed the textless heavenly book up and down. After all, this was something that had been passed down in the weapon casting sect for many years. If she accidentally destroyed it, regardless of what the weapon casting sect would think, she would first be condemned by her own conscience. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua decisively grabbed the textless heavenly book and laughed loudly. Her divine sense entered the book like a waterfall. In that instant, Zhang Xiaohua had an epiphany. The path of immortality was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would be pushed back. If you blindly hesitated, how could you still have the bearing of a Qi practitioner? Only forging ahead with determination was the correct path. If she was so overcautious and timid, she would be at a disadvantage. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense enveloped the entire heavenly book. She carefully examined the restrictions on the book. Apart from a slight flaw where the word Tian was written on the cover, everything else was flawless. Although the fluctuations of vital qi were somewhat weak, it was still incomparably firm in her divine sense. This was the first time that Zhang Xiaohua had seen the restrictions on the book. However, she had no doubt that if the vital qi of the restrictions was exhausted, the contents of the book would definitely disappear along with the restrictions. It definitely wouldn't appear just because the restrictions disappeared. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua was still rather glad about her choice. After observing for a long time with her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and pondered for a long time. Then, she released her hand. The textless heavenly book abruptly floated in the air, as if an invisible arm was holding it up by Zhang Xiaohua. Then, Zhang Xiaohua made different hand seals in succession. With a wave of her fingers, she sent the hand seals into the heavenly book. Unfortunately, after a while, the hand seals were like clay oxen entering the sea. There was no reaction at all. The heavenly book was still quietly floating in the air, showing no reaction at all. With her eyes closed, Zhang Xiaohua's face remained calm, as if she had already expected such an outcome. Then Zhang Xiaohua bit her lips slightly. Her right hand stopped moving, and her left hand paused for a moment. Immediately, she slowly made another set of hand seals. This hand seal was made extremely slowly. Her fingers moved slightly, as if there were tens of thousands of kilograms of weight hanging from her fingers. Furthermore, her fingers were far less agile than before. Needless to say, this was the restriction technique that Zhang Xiaohua had just comprehended. As the hand seals became more complicated, the sluggishness between Zhang Xiaohua's fingers gradually disappeared. What followed was the obscurity of the hand seals. After the hand seals were made, she reached out and inserted it into the heavenly book. The heavenly book trembled slightly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. It seemed that there was some effect. Hence, she continued to make the next hand seal. However, her right hand still pinched her thumb and middle finger together, and did not move. The second hand seal was still unfamiliar at first, then proficient at it. Zhang Xiaohua's body was already emitting traces of qi of heaven and earth. This was the genuine qi in her body that was affected by the hand seals. Because she was unfamiliar with it, it leaked out. Zhang Xiaohua continued to make 17 hand seals, all of which were extremely obscure. Moreover, a lot of qi of heaven and earth had already appeared around Zhang Xiaohua. The heavenly book that was floating in the air first trembled slightly, then trembled violently, and then emitted a faint blue light. The qi of heaven and earth around Zhang Xiaohua was all attracted to it, emitting a bright brilliance. It was very beautiful. As the hand seals were inserted, the blue light became more intense. When the 17th hand seal was inserted, the heavenly book almost became a blue ball of light. Zhang Xiaohua could see it clearly with her divine sense. She immediately made the last hand seal. This was a hand seal that required the cooperation of both hands. Zhang Xiaohua's right thumb and middle finger separated and her wrist turned nimbly. The fingers on both her left and right hands seemed to be dancing. It was abnormally lively, which was completely different from the previous 17 hand seals. After a moment, the last hand seal was completed. Zhang Xiaohua pursed her lips, a determined expression on her face. Her hands paused for a moment. Then she put both hands forward and inserted the hand seal into the heavenly book. When the heavenly book received the hand seal, it immediately emitted a bright blue light. It was abnormally dazzling. Although Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and used her divine sense to observe, she naturally closed her eyes again. It was only for a moment that the extremely brilliant blue light suddenly disappeared. A simple and unadorned book appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. Without opening her eyes, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it. Just as her divine sense came into contact with the book, a strange change occurred. The book seemed to have a strong suction force that pulled Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense into it. As soon as her divine sense entered the book, she lost contact with Zhang Xiaohua. This book could actually absorb divine sense. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Her first reaction was to withdraw her divine sense. This was the first time she had encountered something that could absorb divine sense. How could she not be shocked? However, she only hesitated for a moment. In her essence of elixir, the golden light flashed, and the strong divine sense continued to be injected into the book. The book did not hold back and swallowed the divine sense like a whale drinking water. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua also gritted her teeth. The essence of elixir in her Naiwan palace flashed repeatedly, and more divine sense was injected into the book as if it was free. At this moment, an even more mysterious scene appeared. As Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense poured in, the ancient book gradually came to life. Following the divine sense, the pages of the book automatically flipped. What was even more unbelievable was that as the pages of the book flipped, countless ancient characters suddenly flew out from the blank pages. They followed the direction of the divine sense and swarmed into Zhang Xiaohua's head. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was completely stunned. He had read many jade slips, but he had never seen such a big scene. This weapon-casting sex method seemed to be too arrogant. He was like a country boy who had never seen the world. This was his first time entering Pingyang City. All Zhang Xiaohua could think of now was to channel all his consciousness into the scroll. He could not think of anything else calm. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 482. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how much time had passed, but the ancient characters in the scroll were still flowing in endlessly, and Zhang Xiaohua already felt that his consciousness was about to be exhausted. Although Zhang Xiaohua now had God's guidance and wasn't afraid of the consumption of his consciousness, but if he didn't have the guidance of his consciousness, wouldn't these ancient texts that rushed into his mind backfire on him, or harm the scroll? This was not something Zhang Xiaohua could know. Therefore, he could only muster his strength and pour in what little spiritual sense he had, hoping that he could complete the transmission of the texts before his spiritual sense was exhausted. After a while, the number of characters floating in the air gradually decreased. It seemed that the transmission had reached the end. However, Zhang Xiaohua's spiritual sense was also exhausted. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and was about to withdraw his spiritual sense to deal with the sudden interruption of the transmission. At this moment, the golden array outside the essence of herbalism rotated and shot a ray of golden light into the core of the essence of herbalism. The essence of herbalism shook again and suddenly produced a ray of spiritual sense. Although this ray of spiritual sense was small, once it came out of the essence of herbalism, it made Zhang Xiaohua feel that it was dense. If Zhang Xiaohua's current spiritual sense was sparse air, then this ray of spiritual sense was a dense stream. The moment the spiritual sense left the Naiwan Palace, it immediately entered the scroll. As the spiritual sense entered, the pages that had been slowly flipping suddenly sped up and flipped to the end in a few moments. The texts that were transmitted into Zhang Xiaohua's mind also intensified, and this sudden increase in input actually made Zhang Xiaohua feel a splitting headache. Fortunately, the transmission process had reached the end, and there was not much information transmitted in that instant. The pain disappeared in a flash. When Zhang Xiaohua came back to his senses, the ancient scroll had already closed and was quietly floating in the air. The blue brilliance had long disappeared, and it had returned to its previous appearance of the wordless heavenly book. Zhang Xiaohua patted her forehead and waved her hand. The wordless heavenly book fell into her hand. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the cover, and then flipped through the book. It was still blank. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to use her divine sense to look at the restriction again. Unfortunately, the thief had left and the building was empty. She wanted to, but she was powerless. Zhang Xiaohua carefully placed the wordless heavenly book in her bosom. She did not check the words that had just entered her mind. She just looked down and recited the incantation for the second level of God's traction. She slowly rotated her Dan core to replenish the consumption of her divine sense. Although he had consumed all of his divine sense just now, the last wisp of divine sense that shot out from the elixir core had pointed out a path for Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation. The more divine sense there was, the better. Only the quality was truly good. Although Zhang Xiaohua had only sensed a small amount of it, he could faintly feel that it was equivalent to at least 20% of his divine sense. It seemed that this God's traction still needed more effort. It was not until the sun was about to set that Zhang Xiaohua slowly opened her eyes. She calmly looked around the pill room and stood up. In the morning, she had finished copying the 5 elements Dian formation with Niaqinyu. Niaqinyu had left behind the pill formula and medicinal herbs that Zhang Xiaohua needed to refine in the afternoon. However, Zhang Xiaohua had spent the entire afternoon on the wordless heavenly book. How could she have the time to care about these medicinal herbs? The medicinal herbs that had been left unused for the entire afternoon were already a little wilted. However, when Zhang Xiaohua had deciphered the wordless heavenly book, a lot of heaven and earth essence qi had gushed out. The entire pill room was filled with a lot of heaven and earth essence qi. Although those medicinal herbs had already left the ground, the essence qi they contained had not dissipated too much. However, if they were to stay in this pill room for the night, they probably would not be able to be used tomorrow. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, and put these medicinal herbs into the money bag. He had wanted to put these medicinal herbs into the jade box, but the jade box was too small and the medicinal herbs were too long. If he took them out tomorrow, he did not know what Niaqinyu would ask. It was better to put them directly into the space of the money bag. It seemed that the essence qi inside was sufficient, so there should not be much change. After putting away the medicinal herbs, Zhang Xiaohua stepped out of the pill room and shook his head, which was still a little painful. The feeling of exhausting his divine sense and pouring in a huge amount of words was really uncomfortable. It seemed that when he read the jade slip in the future, he would have to pay more attention. From the transmission method of the wordless heavenly book, it could be seen that the Way of Immortals did not only record words in jade slips. In the future, if he encountered a strange restriction formation, it would be best to make some defenses for himself. Just now, if there had been a sudden attack from the book along with the words, he would have been flustered and might have been injured. Of course, there was the spirit guidance to repair his divine sense, but it was hard to say if there were other unknown attacks. Outside the pill room, It was dusk and the weather was already hot. The air mixed with the smell of medicinal herbs blew in his face. Zhang Xiaohua took a deep breath. He liked the faint smell of medicinal herbs very much. Under the stone wall in the distance, although there were still many disciples going in and out of the pill room, it was much less than in the morning. Their busy faces were full of satisfied smiles. For some reason, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of his father and elder brother who were far away in the Guozhuang house. At this time, they should also be coming back from the fields outside the village, carrying hoes on their shoulders, or maybe with tobacco in their mouths, leisurely walking back home. In the small courtyard not far away, there should be smoke rising gradually. Haha, maybe now there were 2 wisps of smoke rising. Mother, an unforgettable face appeared in front of his eyes. Thinking of the doting in his mother's eyes, thinking of his mother's expectations, Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously raised his head. The sun in the distance was about to set. Unconsciously, his heart was filled with warmth, and his head was no longer as painful as before. Facing the afterglow, he walked briskly towards the inner part of the valley. The shadow behind him was getting longer and longer. After turning a few winding paths, Zhang Xiaohua came in front of a medicinal garden. The plants here were all exquisite red. Strings of bright red flower buds were raised on slender stems and leaves. When the breeze blew, there were slight waves from one end to the other. Zhang Xiaohua picked up a clean, slightly raised piece of soil and sat down. It was just like when he was young, when he was tired from working in the Guozhuang house, sitting on the ridge of the fields. He casually pulled out an exquisite red flower from the medicinal garden. Holding it in his hand, he swayed it left and right, as if it was a dog's tail flower. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's mood seemed to have returned to 10 years ago. It seemed that it had been a long time since he was so relaxed and lazy. Sitting there lazily, he let the wind blow through his hair, and let the sun pass over his face. In the forest not far away, birds were chirping. It was not until the setting sun took away the last ray of light in this world that peace gradually returned. The birds also returned to their nests to enjoy the warmth of the bird's nest. Zhang Xiaohua closed his eyes and didn't look at his surroundings. He also didn't release his consciousness. However, in this moment of tranquility, he seemed to understand everything around him. He saw it clearer than his eyes, and saw it more meticulously than his consciousness. It was as if he was this silence, and everything in this silence was him. The headache from overusing his consciousness, and the large amount of characters rushing in seemed to gradually disappear at this moment. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was enjoying this beautiful scene, his brow suddenly furrowed. He felt that there seemed to be someone walking in his direction from the distance. Although he couldn't be sure, his heart was moved. Immediately after, he released his consciousness. Indeed, Valley Master Nia was slowly walking in his direction from several dozen feet away. He seemed to be searching for something as he walked. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile. In this rejuvenation valley, apart from Elder Zhang and the others, the only person that Valley Master Nia would search for in this manner was probably himself. Looking at the direction he was looking in, it could only be himself. Sighing, Zhang Xiaohua stood up with the exquisite red in his hand. It was rare for him to have a moment of leisure, but he had finished enjoying it just like that. Looking at Valley Master Nia's appearance, something must have happened. Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved. Could it be that someone from the School of Fragrance had come? Counting the days, it should be about time. Thinking of his second brother whose whereabouts were unknown, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent, and quickly went to greet them. After walking for a while, she happened to meet Valley Master Nia. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua walk over, Valley Master Nia immediately stopped and said with a smile, "Virtuous nephew Ren, why aren't you refining pills and cultivating in the pill room today? You're actually in the mood to come enjoy the scenery in the valley?" Glancing at the exquisite red in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, he continued without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak. "My rejuvenation valley is like spring all year round. The scenery in the inner valley is exceptionally beautiful. This exquisite red is only one of the many places. If virtuous nephew likes it, little you can take you around tomorrow." Zhang Xiaohua raised the exquisite red and looked at it with interest, saying, "Thank you for your concern, Uncle Nia. I've been copying formations all this time. Today, I've come out for a walk because Nameless was irritated. Playing with flowers and admiring the moon should be the business of scholars. Us Jianghu people can forget about it. Valley Master Nia was a bit embarrassed when he heard this and smiled. Speaking of which, I still want to express my thanks to Virtuous Nephew. Also, I want to privately apologize to you on behalf of Boss C. Actually, although Boss C's actions were a bit rash, he did have some difficulties. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. It's all difficulties. AI, forget it. Why bother? Only I can decipher this wordless heavenly book. No matter how many years it's in weapon forging sect, it'll still be a wordless heavenly book. In the end, it'll probably be like the other immortal inheritances and turn to dust. Although the spell I inserted into the scroll this afternoon and absorbed my own divine sense can't fix the flaw on the scroll's cover, it's already full of vitality. It shouldn't be a problem to store it for another 1,000 years. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and stopped Valley Master Nia from speaking, saying, I have my own heart towards the bright moon. Why should I fear the bright moon shining on the ravine? There's no need for excessive explanations. My beta school has always kept its word. Once the elders in the school discover the secret, they will definitely tell weapon forging sect. Hearing this, Valley Master Nia's expression trembled, and he solemnly bowed deeply, saying, Virtuous Nephew is so righteous. I thank you on behalf of weapon forging sect. Zhang Xiaohua sighed slightly and shook her head. She also returned the bow and asked, Did Valley Master Nia come here to find me? Valley Master Nia nodded, saying, That's right. It's because Virtuous Nephew has an agreement with my Rejuvenation Valley that I came to discuss it with Virtuous Nephew. Come. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 483. Zhang Xiaohua said with joy. Could it be that the people from the fragrant religion are here today? Valley Head Nia was stunned and shook his head. Nephew Run will be disappointed. It's not the people from the fragrant religion. Then he explained, counting the days, the people from the fragrant religion should be here. It's just that they don't come at a fixed time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe 10 days later. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, Then why is Uncle Nia looking for me? Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Valley Head Nia couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He rubbed his hands and said, Hee, it's really been tiring for you these days. Every day, you have to teach Xiaoyu those complicated arrays. Now you even forgot about your agreement with Elder Zhang. That's right. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead. 10 days ago, she did make an agreement with Elder Zhang to help Rejuvenation Valley refine the Crimson Flame Pill. But because of the weapon forging sect, she had to copy the 5 elements Dian array every day and had long forgotten about it. If Valley Head Nia didn't remind her, Zhang Xiaohua really would have forgotten about it. Zhang Xiaohua quickly apologized. Valley Head Nia, I didn't do it on purpose. It's really that during this time, Valley Head Nia waved his hand and said, I know. Nephew Ren has to copy with Xiaoyu every morning, refine pills in the afternoon, and cultivate at night. If it wasn't for Elder Zhang's repeated urging, the people from the fragrant religion will be here soon. They won't be here for long. If we wait for them to arrive, there won't be enough time. So, I have to disturb you. I want to ask, when can we start refining the pills? During this time, Zhang Xiaohua had been copying the array and refining the pills. It could be said that she had accumulated a lot of experience in refining pills, and was more confident in refining the Crimson Flame Pill. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua replied, Uncle Nia, I think Master C of the weapon forging sect is still waiting in the Outer Valley. This array can be copied in 2 days. How about this? I'll prepare in the next 2 days. Once the array is copied, we'll start immediately. What do you think? When Valley Master Nia heard this, he smiled and asked, Why don't you rest for a few days? It won't be too late to refine after that. Forget it. You've already rushed me here. Can I still rest? Zhang Xiaohua cursed inwardly and said, It's okay. Actually, little you is the one who is copying. I'm just dictating. Little you should be the one who needs to rest. He then asked, I wonder if Elder Zhang has collected all the ingredients for the Crimson Flame Pill? Valley Master Nia nodded and said, the ingredients for the Crimson Flame Pill are all very rare. Elder Zhang was afraid that he wouldn't be able to refine them after collecting them, causing the medicinal effects to disappear, so he didn't dare to pick them. He has been guarding these medicinal herbs these past few years, afraid that the birds and beasts would damage them. Didn't nephew also encounter Big White that day? Dubai weaves in and out of these medicinal herbs and protects them. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was overjoyed. She was really afraid that Elder Zhang would casually pick them and cause the qi of heaven and earth in the medicinal herbs to be lost. Then the refined medicinal pills would be greatly reduced. Thus she hurriedly instructed, Uncle Nia, please tell Elder Zhang to wait until I'm ready before picking them. At that time, it would be best if, when she said this, she originally wanted to say, it would be best if I went to pick them myself. These words clearly showed that she didn't trust Rejuvenation Valley and overestimated herself. She immediately changed her words and said, it would be best if Elder Zhang used a jade box or something similar to seal the medicinal herbs. What do you think? Valley Master Nia waved his hand and said, nephew, you don't have to instruct me on this. Although Rejuvenation Valley isn't too particular when refining medicinal pills now, this is only refining ordinary things. For a medicinal pill as precious as the Crimson Flame Pill, the medicinal herbs naturally have to be preserved using ancient methods. Nephew, please rest assured. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Of course, even if Rejuvenation Valley didn't know how to refine medicinal pills of the immortal Tao, they would at least know the method of preserving medicinal herbs. Moreover, Elder Zhang had immersed himself in the study of medicinal herbs for many years. Even if he didn't know the methods of the immortal Tao, he was much better at picking medicinal herbs than her. Fortunately, she didn't say it out loud, otherwise she would be laughed at for no reason. Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, that's good, that's good. Since they had discussed the important matter of Rejuvenation Valley, Valley Master Nia was very happy and said, nephew, do you still want to walk around here? I'll call little you over. She also likes secluded valleys very much. Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely this time and repeatedly waved her hand, saying, many thanks for Uncle Nia's good intentions, but nephew has already wasted a lot of time. It's better to return to the pill room and cultivate. The path of martial arts is like sailing against the current. Nephew has been slow-witted since childhood, and has been unable to make any progress in martial arts. Many of the martial brothers in the sect have higher cultivation than me. Nephew can only seize all the time to cultivate, so that I won't be left further behind. This time it was Valley Master Nia's turn to be speechless. He secretly said, this level of martial arts is still not ranked in the beta school. Who would believe it if I said it? However, Valley Master Nia still encouraged her. Nephew, you have such perseverance. Sooner or later, you will stand out among the martial brothers. Then, nephew, quickly return to the pill room to cultivate. This old man will quietly wait for the day when nephew reaches the peak. After he finished speaking, Valley Master Nia smiled and left. It was unknown whether he went to Elder Zhang's place or outside the valley. Zhang Xiaohua quietly stood for a while and released her divine sense. She didn't feel any discomfort like before. She was slightly happy. She made a hand sign and directly returned to the pill room. After setting up the formation, Zhang Xiaohua very naturally sat down cross-legged. And immortal cultivation is good. As long as you have a praying mat, you can even save on a bed. Zhang Xiaohua was like a naughty child who was about to open a toy box to see his new toy. He was a little impatient, a little nervous, and a little expectant. This was the textless heavenly book. The Carefree Heart Sutra had paved the way for him to reach the heavens. Now that the textless heavenly book had made such a grand entrance, what kind of heaven-defying techniques would it record? Just now, a large amount of ancient characters poured into Zhang Xiaohua's mind. He almost didn't have time to look at them, and just threw them there. At this time, just as he closed his eyes and opened those characters in his mind, the first thing that came into his mind was the 4 ancient characters refining the world. Faint Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. This was the textless heavenly book of the refining sect? So this Tian was the Tian in Under the Heavens. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although there was a Tian in the two titles, the textless heavenly book and refining the world were completely different. Not only were they different, they were simply heaven and earth. Out of 10,000 Jianghu people, there wouldn't be a single person who didn't have fantasies about this textless heavenly book. And out of these 10,000 people, perhaps only 10 people were interested in this refining the world. On one hand, Zhang Xiaohua secretly cursed the shamelessness of the refining sect's predecessors. On the other hand, he carefully organized the characters in his mind. He just so happened to be one of those 10 people who was the most anxious. The refining the world recorded a lot of things. That was what Zhang Xiaohua exchanged his entire divine sense for. If there was less, he would cry to death. Zhang Xiaohua only roughly organized it. Just by looking at the table of contents, he was wild with joy. This table of contents actually recorded the Shoot the Heavens bow, Chaotic Sky Rod, and other immortal Dao weapons that he had never heard of before. There were also some Flag Gate Array, Bewitching Finger, Sharp Stone Array, and other array tools. It must be the refining methods for these weapons and array tools. Looking at the back as expected, there was only one sentence at the end of the book. Refining all the magic tools under the heavens. What a big tone. No wonder it was called Refining the World. So this was the meaning. Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes, rubbed his chin, and laughed as he thought. He now had the weapon refining outline, and could learn the basics of weapon refining. This Refining the World recorded the refining methods for all the magic tools under the heavens. It was the perfect combination for Zhang Xiaohua to learn weapon refining. In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua's resentment towards the refining sect's head, Si Yakong, disappeared. Just thinking about it made him laugh. If sect head Si knew that he had given away the treasures for weapon refining to someone else, he wondered how furious he would be. But then, Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with worry. That 5 elements Dian formation was just a formation, but it had made him busy for 20 days. This was the entire refining the world. How much time would it take for him to completely copy it down? But if he didn't copy it down, how could he fulfill his promise? Just thinking about it made him scratch his head. However, there were still 20 years. He would think about it when the time came. Zhang Xiaohua was very good at comforting himself. Perhaps there would be a way when the time came? If it really didn't work, he would just return it to them and copy a few simple refining methods that could be used in martial arts for them. Thinking about the 3 broken flags in his money bag, Zhang Xiaohua first flipped through the cultivation of formation tools. After looking at it for a while, he nodded thoughtfully and pondered in his heart. Although the 3 flags of the 3-talent flag gate formation were not eye-catching, there were many things used in them. Many of them were things that Zhang Xiaohua had never heard of before. If Zhang Xiaohua had to start from scratch and refine them again, he wouldn't even think about it. Fortunately, this was a ready-made item. The flagpole and flag were all intact, but the formation on the flags had run out of vitality. He only needed to replenish vitality to repair the formation on the flags. Although Zhang Xiaohua had never done the work of repairing formation tools, he was not unfamiliar with formations. Moreover, in Refining the World, it was written clearly on how to repair the flags. He looked carefully. How could he not know how to do it? Seeing that it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua stood up and walked in front of the earth fire. He first took out the flagpole and flags, then turned on the earth fire. Zhang Xiaohua's face was serious as he formed a seal with both hands and sent it into the earth fire to control the flames. Then, with a wave of his hand, one of the flagpoles flew into the blue flames. Following that, he sent in a few more seals. When the fire broke through the formation, Zhang Xiaohua threw another flag into it. The flag rolled a few times in the flames, but it didn't burn. Instead, due to the rich vitality of heaven and earth in the earth fire, the vitality rushed into the flag and made the flag more distinct. Moreover, various talismans gradually appeared on the flag. Zhang Xiaohua knew that these talismans were the formation of the 3-talent flag gate formation. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian. Chapter 484. After the burning of the earth fire, the talisman on the flag became more visible. It was almost out of the flag, and the array on the flagpole also emerged from the dark texture. Zhang Xiaohua saw that the time was right, and the expression on her face became more serious. She took a deep breath, and the true qi in her body surged. Her hands followed the formula of refining the world, and her fingers flicked. She put the formula that she had just made into the two separated array tools. The small flag and the flagpole were attracted by the formula, and they gradually approached each other. As the distance between the two got closer, it seemed that there was a huge repulsive force between the two, and they faintly repelled each other. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown when she saw this. Refining the world did not describe such a situation, and it could only be encountered in real practice. However, Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. She still put in different formulas step by step, and according to her own poor experience, she put in some formulas twice more. So under the efforts of Zhang Xiaohua, the two things were getting closer and closer. When they were about to get close, Zhang Xiaohua's forehead was sweating. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but complain in her heart. Previously, she used the refining method to refine the jade pendant for protection. She felt that it was very easy, so she looked down on this refining method. During this period of time, she also used the earth fire and the pill furnace to refine medicinal pills. She dealt with the fire, and felt that the way of alchemy was similar to the way of refining weapons. So, today she didn't consider carefully and directly used the refining method to repair the small flag. But at the last moment when the two were about to merge, she couldn't do it. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and released her divine thought. She used the formula to control the earth fire slightly, trying to calm down. I just performed the formula and steps according to the record of refining the world. There is no mistake in it. Why can't I refine the two together? Zhang Xiaohua could not help but quickly recall the refining process just now. Suddenly his eyes lit up. Refining equipment and refining pills were both refining. Refining pills was refining the essence of herbs and building different essences together. It was very meticulous and meticulous. On the other hand, refining equipment was smelting materials of different qualities and adding them into a formation to form something completely new. It was very particular about smelting and embedding. The two refining methods looked the same, but there was a fundamental difference. The evolution of the heavenly Tao, the separation of yin and yang, and the creation of the 5 elements. Weren't refining pills and refining equipment the two sides of yin and yang? Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have realized something. He had always been refining pills, but he was much more careful and meticulous. It was not suitable for the pure yang way of refining weapons. Thinking about the boiling jade liquid when she refined the jade pendant, Zhang Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. Then she forced all the true qi in her body into her fingers. She once again formed the formula. Slowly and rhythmically, she sent the formula into the earth fire. The two array weapons that could not be merged for a long time. As Zhang Xiaohua's formula was sent in, it was as if there was an invisible hand that pulled the two array weapons together. Suddenly a white brilliance flashed. The flag and the flagpole finally merged together. The talismans on the two disappeared at the same time. Only a complete small flag floated above the earth fire. Zhang Xiaohua let out a long breath. With a wave of her hand, the small flag floated into her hand. Zhang Xiaohua carefully looked at the intersection of the flag and the flagpole. She did not see any traces. She could not help but be amazed. Inwardly she said, "This is the legendary flawless?" After fiddling with it for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put the small flag into her purse. Although the time it took to refine the small flag was not long, the consumption of true qi was enormous. She had almost used up all the true qi in her body. She simply did not have any energy left to refine the other two. Zhang Xiaohua walked back to the praying mat. While walking, she sighed. In the past, compared to the martial artists, she always felt that she was more powerful than them. But now, in the afternoon, deciphering the refining the world consumed her divine sense. In the evening, she refined an array weapon. Oh, and it was only repairing an array weapon, but she used up all her true qi. Although there were no longer any immortals in this world, Zhang Xiaohua still felt very ashamed. Her cultivation base at the early stage of the refining qi stage was really not enough. She was still wholeheartedly thinking about finding the method of refining, and preparing to show her skills to refine a handy magic tool. Looking at it now, it was almost an unattainable thing. Only when she reached the late stage of the refining qi stage, or the legendary foundation establishment stage, would it be possible. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua decided to take a good look at the refining principles first. She would put the refining the world in her purse. She would wait until her strength was enough to cultivate it. Sitting cross-legged on the dark green praying mat, although it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua already had no intention of comprehending the talisman or array. He was really too tired today. Taking out 2 primordial stones from his bosom, he closed his eyes and meditated. Silently, he operated the Worry-Free Heart Sutra to slowly replenish his consumed true qi. In the next 2 days, according to the original arrangement, Zhang Xiaohua imparted the remaining changes of the 5 elements Dian array to Nie Qianyu one by one. She recorded them in detail. Moreover, in the afternoon and evening, the remaining 2 small flags were repaired. Although the repair of these 3 small flags exhausted Zhang Xiaohua, it also improved her cultivation. Unexpectedly, it improved even more than when she refined pills. Zhang Xiaohua faintly understood that refining pills and refining tools were also cultivation methods. Similarly, they could also be used to cultivate great divine abilities. After obtaining the 5 elements Dian array, Si Yakong finally fulfilled one of his wishes. Looking at the detailed and complete array, he didn't dare to believe it. There were simply too many things inside, far beyond his imagination. It also far exceeded the records of the weapon forging sect. For this reason, Si Yakong specially came to the pill room in the inner valley to express his gratitude to Zhang Xiaohua. Although Zhang Xiaohua didn't like being schemed against by others, she had received a lot of benefits from the weapon forging sect. How could she just ignore them? Thus, she chatted happily with Si Yakong for a long time. She even promised to visit the weapon forging sect again after she finished teaching the incense cult and returned to Beidou school. Si Yakong was also very happy. He had always avoided meeting Zhang Xiaohua because he felt guilty. Today, when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua didn't pursue the matter and even gave him guidance on the application of the array, he didn't mention the textless heavenly book again. He even agreed to help Zhang Xiaohua search for rare and strange materials for refining tools. He even wanted to teach Zhang Xiaohua a few things on the spot. When Valley Master Nie saw this, the stone in his heart was finally put down. He knew that Zhang Xiaohua didn't take certain things to heart. On one side was his big brother whom he had known for many years, and on the other was a young hero whom the Rejuvenation Valley owed a great debt of gratitude to. He felt very uncomfortable being caught in the middle. After sending Si Yakong off, Valley Master Nie hurriedly returned and asked softly, "Virtuous nephew Run, the matter of the array has been completed. Do you?" Valley Master Nie blushed with shame. Who was the Valley Master of Rejuvenation Valley? He still had to wait for the other person to have time to refine a medicinal pill. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Uncle Nie, don't be impatient. I've also organized the pill recipe these past few days. It will be completed in half a day. How about this? Tomorrow morning, I'll ask Elder Zhang to pick the medicinal herbs for the Crimson Flame pill. I'll wait here respectfully. How about we open the cauldron and refine the pill together?" Valley Master Nie was overjoyed and was about to speak. But at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua said with a troubled expression, "There's one more thing that I have to tell you, Uncle Nie." Valley Master Nie was startled and said with a smile, "Virtuous nephew, if you have something to say, please say it. There's no need to worry." Zhang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and said, "Uncle Nie, by right, you're not an outsider. I also learned many things about refining pills from Rejuvenation Valley. Refining the Crimson Flame pill is a rare opportunity for us alchemists. It's better to discuss and observe together, but..." Hearing this, Valley Master Nie's expression turned ugly. "That's right, you've learned Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy skills, and used Rejuvenation Valley's medicinal herbs to refine medicinal pills. It seems like you don't want Rejuvenation Valley's Valley Master to observe from the side. Oh, I forgot. You've even asked Rejuvenation Valley's daughter to choose a pill room for you and study with you. In the end, you actually want to throw her aside. How could she accept it? Seeing Valley Master Nia's ugly expression, Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly, Uncle Nia should know my personality. If it weren't for the fact that I had no other choice, I wouldn't say such things. Some of the techniques used to refine the Crimson Flame pill were copied from the ancient pill refining technique scroll that I gave you last time. That technique has nothing to do with me passing it to Rejuvenation Valley. However, there are some other techniques that are secretly passed down from my beta school. I received instructions from the elders in the school, and didn't dare to break the school rules. Please forgive me, Uncle Nia. Zhang Xiaohua spoke sincerely and mentioned the techniques used to refine the pill. Valley Master Nia's expression eased a little. What Zhang Xiaohua said was very reasonable. Ever since he started practicing that technique, he could already successfully refine simple pills. It could be seen that she didn't lie to him. One technique in the scroll could restore Rejuvenation Valley to its heyday as an ancient pill refining technique. The other techniques could be imagined. It was normal that she didn't allow him to observe. However, Valley Master Nia still didn't give up. He asked, Nephew, I know your difficulties. However, refining the Crimson Flame pill is a grand occasion that Rejuvenation Valley hasn't had in thousands of years. If I don't watch from the side, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Also, Elder Zhang, at such an old age, protected these medicinal herbs for so many years. If he can't watch the refining of the pill with his own eyes, would he be able to rest in peace? Oh my God, he even used the words, wouldn't rest in peace. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and nodded. I understand Uncle Nia's thoughts very well. How about this? The refining process will still be watched by everyone. However, if necessary, I would like to ask Uncle and Elder Zhang to wait outside the pill room for a moment. When I'm done, I'll invite the two of you in. How about that? Valley Master Nia thought for a moment and said, If that's the case, I feel that it's fine. I'll go back and ask Elder Zhang what he thinks. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, After all, I've put Uncle in a difficult position. Please understand. Valley Master Nia smiled bitterly. Not knowing the technique was just being passive. His every move was restricted by others. He originally wanted to use Rejuvenation Valley's resources to exchange for their secret pill refining techniques. But in the end, he could only watch from afar and couldn't touch the core. Chapter 485. Valley Head Nia's wishful thinking of exchanging resources for skills had failed, so he went out to discuss with Elder Zhang in disappointment. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't worried that Rejuvenation Valley wouldn't agree. The formula and refining method of the Crimson Flame pill were clearly stated in the prescription. Now Rejuvenation Valley's decoction method would definitely not succeed. Even if Valley Head Nia successfully imitated the vital energy she imparted to him, the success rate of refining the Crimson Flame pill was only 30%. Although the conditions she proposed were harsh, it was just that they weren't allowed to watch some parts of the process. Not to mention that the entire process would improve Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy. Even the Crimson Flame pill that was successfully refined in the end was something that Valley Head Nia and Elder Zhang coveted. How could Elder Zhang not agree? How could he not agree? It was recorded in Rejuvenation Valley's prescription that taking the Crimson Flame pill in combination with Rejuvenation Valley's secret internal energy cultivation method could increase one's cultivation by 5 to 10 years. This was an absolutely fatal temptation to any Jianghu person. It was also the first medicinal pill that came to Elder Zhang's mind when he knew that Zhang Xiaohua could refine pills using the ancient method. And in Zhang Xiaohua's jade slip on immortal pills, another name for the Crimson Flame pill was Meridian Nourishing Pill. Its effect was to nourish the meridians and expand the meridians. It wasn't considered a top-grade medicinal pill, and it wasn't even considered a middle-grade medicinal pill. Moreover, things like the crimson pearlgrass and the bright sungrass weren't considered extremely rare medicinal herbs in ancient times. It was just that the qi of heaven and earth had drastically decreased and many of these medicinal herbs had gone extinct, which showed the preciousness of this medicinal pill. When Valley Head Nia left the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua took out the jade slip. He had wanted to take a closer look at it a few days ago, but refining the small flag really took a lot of effort, which was why he kept delaying it. Zhang Xiaohua didn't plan to refine the Crimson Flame pill from the start. He only wanted to refine the Meridian Soothing pill according to the jade slip. After all, the method he used was the Immortal Tao's alchemy. If he really used the method of imitating true qi to refine the Crimson Flame pill, it would be better to let Valley Master Nia refine it himself. Moreover, through this period of refining pills, Zhang Xiaohua had also discovered that although Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipe was based on the Martial Way's pill refinement method, there were still traces of the Immortal Tao's pill refinement method in its bones. Previously, all of his pills had been refined successfully using the Martial Way's method before using the Immortal Tao's method. Moreover, the latter's color and quality were several times better than the former's. This was also the main reason why he wanted to directly refine the Meridian Soothing pill, and not the Crimson Flame pill. After carefully looking through the formula and refining process of the Meridian Soothing pill, Zhang Xiaohua felt that this Meridian Soothing pill was only slightly more complicated than the basic pill. The time spent in the middle was longer, but the other steps were more or less the same. There were only 2 more types of spells, so it shouldn't be too difficult for him. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua already had experience in refining small flags, so he didn't dare to underestimate things that he hadn't tried before. He could only guarantee the possibility of refining the pill from various aspects. After he finished looking through the jade slip, Zhang Xiaohua took out the formula and refining steps of the Crimson Flame pill for reference. However, it was a Martial Way's alchemy method after all, and was much cruder. There were many places where it wasn't suitable, and even felt that there were some errors. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head as he continued reading. But when he reached the end, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly frowned. Why do you think this is? It turned out that in the jade slip, the Meridian Soothing pill was a fiery red pill the size of a soybean. But in the scroll, the Crimson Flame pill was a brownish red pill the size of a thumb. The color and size of these pills were all different. So could they be the same pill? Could it be that the formulas of the 2 pills were different? Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua thought of the 100 Herbs Compendium. She hurriedly took out the thin jade slip and carefully searched for the herbs required for the Meridian Soothing pill. As a low-level pill, the Meridian Soothing pill had many ingredients. Other than the bright sun grass and crimson pearl grass, there were more than 10 other ingredients. Zhang Xiaohua looked through them one by one and memorized their names and appearances in her mind. Then, she compared them with the ingredients for the Crimson Flame pill that she had just memorized. Other than the main ingredient, the other ingredients for the Meridian Soothing pill were close to 10 other ingredients. Among them, there were close to 7 herbs that were similar to the ones for the Meridian Soothing pill. Although their names were different, the effects and appearance of the herbs were very similar. Unsurprisingly, it should be the same type of herb. The other herbs were either different or did not exist. Zhang Xiaohua kept the jade slip and stroked her chin, thinking to herself. She did not need to think too hard to figure out that with the annihilation of the Immortal Tao, the art of refining pills had also changed. The formula for the Meridian Soothing pill might have been passed down, but some of the herbs in it were also extinct. When a martial arts alchemist obtained such a precious formula, he naturally wanted to refine it. Based on his own experience, he changed the herbs in it. As time passed, this formula had been refined by many experienced alchemists, and was modified into the formula for the Crimson Flame pill. The refining method was also almost completely changed. As for the difference in this pill, it was even easier to explain. The herbs were changed and the refining method was also completely different. How could they be the same? However, Zhang Xiaohua still had some doubts. How could the Meridian Soothing pill be smaller than the Crimson Flame pill? Martial arts alchemy was obviously born out of the Immortal Tao. How could the pill refined be better than the Immortal Tao? Thus another problem arose. If she refined the Meridian Soothing pill, how could she explain the relationship between these pills and the Crimson Flame pill? But then, Zhang Xiaohua laughed. She thought to herself, I'll just say that I failed in refining the pill. What else can I say? Anyway, it's my first time refining, so it's normal to fail. If I have extra time, I'll use the cauldron to refine the real Crimson Flame pill. But then the chances of success will not be as good as the Meridian Soothing pill. After making up her mind, Zhang Xiaohua did not try to make a last-minute effort. She took out the incantation for concealing her cultivation level from the god's guidance, and continued her unfinished comprehension. Seeing that the people from the aroma cult were about to arrive, it would be best if she finished comprehending it before they arrived and concealed her immortal Tao cultivation level. If she was discovered, it would be very bad. The beginning of this incantation was very cryptic. Zhang Xiaohua tried to comprehend it several times, and always felt like she had grasped something. But she just could not understand it, and was stuck there. She did not make much progress. It was the same today. Zhang Xiaohua felt vexed. Just as she was about to get up and walk around the inner valley, a thought flashed through her mind like lightning. 2 days ago, when she had a splitting headache, she was resting beside Ling Longhong in the inner valley. She did not release her divine sense, nor did she use any divine abilities. Why did she feel like she was one with her surroundings? Why was she able to sense Valley Master Nie's arrival? Didn't concealing her cultivation level mean that she had to hide her vital energy within her body and not let others see it? Wasn't this exactly the same feeling she had a few days ago? Following this train of thought, Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the Tao of Heaven. Everything in this world was under the Tao of Heaven, and secretly followed the Tao of Heaven. Also, the last time she made a breakthrough, Nie Qinyu said that she looked more ordinary. Wasn't that the same reason? Zhang Xiaohua was suddenly enlightened. The Tao of Heaven was really the origin of all things. Not daring to delay any longer, Zhang Xiaohua put her comprehension of the Tao of Heaven together with the incantation. Not long after, the previous sluggishness actually loosened. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. She quickly sat down again, and closed her eyes to comprehend. At the same time, in the inner valley, on one side of Zhang Xiaohua's pill room, Elder Zhang frowned. He was unusually angry and asked in a deep voice, Valley Master, did Ren Xiaoxia really make such a request? Valley Master Nie helplessly said, Yes, Elder Zhang. I've already said it 5 times. Don't ask any more. Tell me, are we going to refine or not? Elder Zhang was also in a difficult position. Of course he made an agreement with Zhang Xiaohua to refine the Crimson Flame pill. His purpose was to refine it together with Zhang Xiaohua. Not only could he observe the alchemy technique, he could also obtain the Crimson Flame pill. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But when it came down to it, she didn't let him watch from the side. His wishful thinking had failed. How could he not be ashamed and angry? Forget it, I'll go find Ren Xiaoxia and ask. Ren Xiaoxia is loyal and righteous. How can he be so stingy? Elder Zhang finished speaking, and was about to get up. Valley Master Nie grabbed him and said with a bitter smile, Elder Zhang, do you think you know Ren Xiaoxia better than I do? Elder Zhang looked at him and said, Of course not. No matter what, he is still your future father-in-law in name. How can I compare to you? Valley Master Nie hurriedly waved his hand and said, Elder Zhang, please don't say that again. You'll make Ren Xiaoxia angry. He only lent a helping hand. We can't be unkind. Elder Zhang snorted disdainfully. Forget it. If he didn't have some feelings for little you, would he have done this? You and I are both experienced people. Who doesn't understand? Valley Master Nie looked at this elder who was much older than him, and was really speechless. He only said, with my understanding of Ren Xiaoxia, if it wasn't for the sect's special instructions, he wouldn't have refused like this. That's right, haven't you been urging Ren Xiaoxia to refine the Crimson Flame pill? Do you know why I haven't told him? Elder Zhang said unhappily, How would I know? You've been evading me again and again. I don't even know where your elbow is leaning. Valley Master Nie smiled lightly, and told him about the weapon forging sect. Of course, he didn't tell him about the textless heavenly book. The weapon forging sect's 5 elements formation. That brat Si Yakong actually stayed in the outer valley for so long just for this 5 elements formation. Let me think, I seem to have heard his master talk about this mysterious thing before. Could it be that Ren Xiaoxia just let little you copy it and impart the 5 elements formation to our rejuvenation valley? Valley Master Nia also couldn't hide his excitement and said, "That's right. Tell me, if Ren Xiaoxia did this, how could I suspect anything else? It must be that Ren Xiaoxia has a reason that he can't let us know." Elder Zhang also nodded when he heard this. Not bad. The key is that he still wants to leave this crimson flame pill for our rejuvenation valley. Even if we don't look at it, it's worth it. Then it's decided. Elder Zhang, tomorrow morning, I'll bring a few jade boxes stored in the valley, and we'll pick the ingredients for the crimson flame pill. Okay, we'll do this tomorrow. Come and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 486. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua still practiced the Big Dipper magical fist as before and didn't feel any difference. However, when she finished practicing the fist technique and was about to return to the pill room, she saw Valley Head Nia and Elder Zhang excitedly walking over from the inner valley. They were talking excitedly as they walked. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and looked at the sky that was blocked by the mountain wall. She was speechless. The sun seemed to have just risen from the east, and here we are still in darkness. You don't have to be in such a hurry to squeeze out labor. The chickens haven't even crowed yet. Cough cough. I forgot that there are no chickens in the inner valley of Rejuvenation Valley. There are only the chirping of birds. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua standing in front of the pill room, Valley Head Nia quickly walked forward and cupped his hands. "Nephew Run, you're up so early." Zhang Xiaohua returned the greeting and said, "I can't help it. I'm so tired that I can't sleep when the sun rises. I keep thinking about what I have to do today." Valley Head Nia chuckled and didn't reply. Elder Zhang raised the jade box in his hand and said, "No matter how early Xiaoxia woke up today, he didn't wake up as early as Valley Head Nia and I. According to the records of Rejuvenation Valley, it's best to pick the herbs before the dew disappears. Therefore, the two of us woke up before the sun rises." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said, "There's actually such a thing? How come I don't know? How many days have you been in the sect? There are still many things you don't know." Elder Zhang mercilessly attacked. Valley Head Nia said, "This is a rule passed down from an unknown era in Rejuvenation Valley. It's only passed down by word of mouth, and there aren't even any records. It's normal that nephew doesn't know." Zhang Xiaohua nodded, but he had a strange feeling in his heart. "That's right. I've read a lot of pill formulas and books, but I haven't studied them systematically after all. Many of the things I learned were pieced together. For example, I don't know anything about the secrets and tricks that are taught orally. And these minute things are often the key. It's the true knowledge that predecessors have obtained through practice." Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had some thoughts, Valley Head Nia keenly asked, "Nephew Ren, is there something wrong with the picking of the herbs?" Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly for a moment, then said with a smile, "I only secretly learned a move from your Rejuvenation Valley. How could there be anything inappropriate? Let me take a look at the herbs first." It wasn't that Zhang Xiaohua didn't believe in Rejuvenation Valley's skills, but she didn't do everything herself, so she felt uneasy. She didn't seem like she was made to be a valley head. Elder Zhang understood and didn't say anything. He just handed over the jade box in his hand. Zhang Xiaohua took it and looked at it carefully. It was a jade box about the same size as hers, but it was white in color. At a glance, the quality of the jade couldn't be compared to hers. She used her divine sense to scan the jade box, but there was no fluctuation of vitality on it. Zhang Xiaohua was about to open it when she heard Valley Head Nia say, "Nephew, let's open it in the pill room. The herbs have already been picked from the ground. If we open it now, it will affect the medicinal properties." Valley Head Nia was considered an old expert in refining pills, but when it came to the Crimson Flame pill, a pill that had never been refined, he was still overly cautious. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "Uncle Nia's words are very reasonable. It won't be too late to open it when it's time to refine it." When the three of them arrived at the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua placed the jade box in her hand on the table in the groove and asked, Uncle Nye, how many jade boxes like this do we still have in Rejuvenation Valley? Valley Head Nye thought for a moment and said, there are many more. They were refined with the help of the crafting sect and the crafting sect. However, that was many years ago. In recent years, Rejuvenation Valley has stopped refining high-level pills like the Crimson Flame pill. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, if there is a need for high-level pills, we will mention it when the disciples of the Cult of Fragrance come to Rejuvenation Valley. We will also provide them with the corresponding rare herbs for them to refine, and bring them back the next time they come. Zhang Xiaohua said curiously. The Cult of Fragrance will also help refine pills like the Crimson Flame pill. Valley Head Nye laughed bitterly and said, how is that possible? Nephew overestimates the generosity of the Cult of Fragrance. There are many high-level pills. Why would they refine pills like the Crimson Flame pill that can increase internal energy for us? It's just some other pills. Moreover, Valley Head Nye hesitated for a moment and then said, I believe that the Cult of Fragrance also has methods of refining pills like Nephew's, but I don't see them passing it on to Rejuvenation Valley. Elder Zhang also said angrily, if they could help refine the pills, us two old men wouldn't have to trouble Ren Xiaoxia. Zhang Xiaohua blushed a bit. She knew that he was a bit offended by her request yesterday. She cupped her hands and said, the two elders have been very good to me. I have also studied at Rejuvenation Valley. Seeing this, Elder Zhang waved his hand and stopped Zhang Xiaohua, saying, Ren Xiaoxia, don't say any more. This old man feels uncomfortable, but the rules of your sect cannot be violated. We will not make things difficult for Xiaoxia. However, it would be best if we could see the refining process for as long as possible. We should also leave some of the refined Crimson Flame pills to us. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she laughed loudly and said, Elder Zhang is right. When the pills are refined, I will only take 3 and leave the rest to Rejuvenation Valley. What do you think? Elder Zhang then said, if it's not 3? Or if it's not 6? Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation, if it's not 3, I won't take a single. If it's not 6, Rejuvenation Valley will keep 3. Valley Head Nye was about to speak when Elder Zhang said loudly, Ren Xiaoxia is straightforward. It's settled then. However, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, Elder Zhang, don't be in such a hurry. I also have a presumptuous request. Elder Zhang asked curiously, what else do you have to say? Didn't you say enough yesterday? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and said, this one carefully studied the recipe for the Crimson Flame pill last night, and discovered that refining the Crimson Flame pill doesn't require the entire stock of Crimson Flame grass and Crimson Pearl grass. Even half of the other ingredients will suffice. This one has a request, and that is to first refine the other half of the medicinal herbs. If it's successful, then we will divide it according to our discussion just now. I would like to ask Valley Head Nye and Elder Zhang to leave the ordinary medicinal herbs to this one. What do you think? This. Elder Zhang was a bit troubled. He looked at Valley Head Nye and didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Valley Head Nye frowned and said, and if the refinement fails? Zhang Xiaohua pursed her lips and said, then this little nephew would be too ashamed to accept the remaining half. She then continued, this little nephew will attempt to refine the remaining half. Elder Zhang laughed loudly and said, Ren Xiaoxia has made a good plan and won't suffer a loss at all. You still want to use my Rejuvenation Valley's Crimson Flame grass to refine the pill twice? Zhang Xiaohua didn't hold back and said with a smile, that's still better than the incense cult. They won't refine it for you at all. As the two spoke, Valley Head Nye had finished thinking and nodded. Dead things can't compare to living things. If virtuous nephew can refine the pill, what harm is there in giving the remaining medicinal herbs to Rejuvenation Valley? Furthermore, virtuous nephew doesn't need to have any mental baggage. Just refine as you please. Even if you fail twice, there's no harm. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, Uncle Nye, please don't worry about this. This little nephew still has some confidence, and will not recklessly waste natural resources, and let Elder Zhang's years of hard work go to waste. Oh, that's right, These jade boxes are also for this little nephew. Clang. When Valley Head Nya heard the last sentence, his figure staggered and he thought to himself, "This guy's habits are just as little you said." Without waiting for Valley Head Nya to answer, Elder Zhang waved his hand and said, "Whatever, whatever. There are many more of these things in Rejuvenation Valley. If you like them, there's no harm in having your future father-in-law give you a few more." This time, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be speechless. After all the matters were discussed, Elder Zhang and Valley Head Nya placed their own jade boxes on the table, so that Zhang Xiaohua could start the fire to refine the pill. Zhang Xiaohua hesitated slightly and walked forward. She took down the cauldron placed on top of the earth fire, and placed the immortal cauldron that she had taken from Elder Zhang's pill room on top of it. She was about to open the mechanism and start the earth fire. Seeing this, Elder Zhang immediately stopped her. "Ren Xiaoxia, do you want to use this strange cauldron to refine the pill?" Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. "Exactly. But I've tried this cauldron before. I can't control the temperature at all. How can I refine the pill?" "Elder Zhang, you don't know. A few days ago, I moved it from your place. When I had nothing to do, I blindly thought about it, and happened to come across a technique of our sect that can control this cauldron very well. Moreover, the effect is much better than the original one. Therefore, I thought of using this technique to refine the important Crimson Flame pill. So that's how it is. This is the root cause of his different attitudes." Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang both revealed an expression of sudden realization. No wonder they couldn't watch the entire process. The secret techniques of their sect were naturally forbidden from being spread to outsiders. When Zhang Xiaohua started the earth fire and heated up the cauldron, she stood there and didn't put in the medicine. Elder Zhang asked strangely, "Ren Xiaoxia, quickly input inner energy to increase the temperature?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at him and smiled without speaking. Valley Head Nya pulled his sleeve and said, "Let's go, Elder Zhang. Let's go outside and wait for Ren Xiaoxia to call us." I haven't put in the medicine, and you won't let me watch?" Elder Zhang was depressed. Although he was depressed, they had already agreed. Elder Zhang could only stand up and follow Valley Head Nya out of the pill room. In her spiritual sense, she saw the two helplessly standing outside. Zhang Xiaohua could only apologize in her heart. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand, and the jade boxes on the table all opened their lids. The jade box containing the scarlet flame grass immediately overflowed with an unusually lively heaven-earth yuan qi. The jade box containing the crimson pearl grass overflowed with a gentle and tranquil heaven-earth yuan qi. The heaven-earth yuan qi of the other few medicinal herbs were slightly different, and the concentration was also different. Zhang Xiaohua memorized the positions of the few medicinal herbs, and closed the lids of the jade boxes. Then, she lightly breathed in and formed a seal with both hands. She hit the cauldron and was about to refine the Meridian Soothing Pill. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.